I will say, on another subject before we get started, this series has finally wormed its way into like my daily thought processes. Nice. As I was driving home listening to Broadway musicals, as one does, and Agony from Into the Woods came on, and I was like, this is very Dorian and Kale coded about them like competing over who was left for worse by.
It's funny.
I'm so proud. This makes me so happy.
Yay.
I love that.
Kyle's finally on board. 4 books in.
Only took 10 episodes.
Finally got him. When you're reading it every night, it's hard to not finally let it seep into your daily thoughts.
Welcome.
Okay, let's do it. I'm ready. Welcome back to Between Pages and Friends, a book club podcast hosted by Con and Lauren, two besties who read a lot of books, and John and Kyle, our supportive gamer husbands who've agreed to read with us. I'm Con.
I'm Kyle.
I'm John.
And I'm Lauren. Welcome to episode 10 of our Throne of Glass book club. In this episode, we will be discussing Heir of Fire, chapters 20 to 35. This is a book club style podcast, meaning there will be no spoilers for future chapters or books. So if you've only read up to part 1 of Heir of Fire, including the Assassin's Blade, this is a safe place to process while we discuss.
So if you don't know why wildflowers are the bane of Manon's existence and why Luca can't stop asking for snacks, go read the rest of part 1 and come back. Additionally, this is your mild content warning. We'll be discussing themes from the book that include fistfights, vulgar gestures, and everybody's trauma. If you're dying to discuss these episodes with us and an amazing community of other book lovers, you can join our Patreon.
Yes, if you are already a Patreon member, you'll know that we now have dedicated chats for each episode in our Discord. This includes spoiler-free chats if you're reading along for the first time with Lauren and Kyle, and spoiler chats if you've already finished the series and want to freak out with me and John over all the reactions and connections. There are a ton of other channels and forums as well for everything under the sun, so you can join our Discord for $5 a month in the Snack Court tier through our Patreon. This tier includes some other fun benefits and perks, but if you're looking for even more, like early access to these episodes, a monthly book club with us, etc., you can join the Peach Ring Book Club tier for $10 a month. Our Patreon is linked in the show notes or description below, so you can check out all the details.
And if you're loving these episodes, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening. Writing a review and sharing with a friend is definitely the best way to support the show. And actually, here's a recent review on Apple Podcasts from Channeling Van Gogh, who writes, SJM fan, subscribe now. I started listening to this podcast after discovering the group on Instagram. As a huge SJM fan, I absolutely love this podcast. It feels like a book club about my favorite author with my closest of friends. It's both entertaining and comforting. I look forward to each week's podcast, so thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. Y'all rock. Also, as a gummy candy aficionado and Target addict, I've also tried the Target brand peach rings. Agreed with the best flavor and consistency, LOL. Go off, Queen. First of all, yes. Second, thank you so much. Reviews and messages like this, they mean the world to us and help us reach even more Sarah J. Maas fans like yourself. So, speaking of Sarah J. Maas fans, I'm turning this over to Con for the pronunciation guide.
Ooh,
Thank
smooth
you.
Transition.
Really quick though, I just realized I need to make sure that I know how to pronounce one of these names.
While we wait for that, this doesn't have to be included, but I was just curious. John, what's your opinion on like the original peach ring, the Haribo peach rings?
I mean, my opinion on Haribo in general is that they all suck.
I mean, I don't like the other gummy bears.
That's fair.
Tough. There is a watermelon one that I tried recently that is fantastic, but it's just like a watermelon wedge. But yeah. I recently learned they were the original peach rings. So I was like, I wonder what John's opinion on it is.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, they're not super great. They're Betty. They're Betty. They are.
Sure. They're Betty.
Betty.
You know what I mean?
They're just. You know,
they're just Betty.
The peach rings are better than the Haribo gummy bears.
Yeah, that's
the
not
gummy
hard
bears
to
are
beat.
just awful. God.
I couldn't even find their peach rings. I found Haribo peaches.
Oh yeah.
Very like Turkish delightish, but I didn't find any rings.
Yeah, Connor's mom got me a bag of those at like an airport or something on one of her trips a few months back.
But not like a bag, like a bag.
I mean, yeah, it was like a freaking court bag or something. Like, yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Because if anyone ever called her by her full name,
Linnea. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad I listened to that because I was about to say Linnea. It's not that. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
How embarrassing.
How embarrassing for the
I
name
would
that's
have laughed and laughed.
the full name they put in there one time.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Here we go with Heir of Fire, chapters 20 to 35. New names and locations mentioned. First up, we have Skinwalkers, the creepy things Selena and Rowan encountered in the woods. Abraxos, the name Manon gave to her wyvern. Fendir, which is Iskra's wyvern. And then some more of the witches are Vesta, Lynn, which is short for Linnea, Edda and Briar, who are the shadows. And then mentioned by Murtaugh, we hear about Ravi and Sol from Surya, Lord Cal, Lady Marian, and their daughter Elide from Peranth. We also find out that Cal was executed and his brother Vernon Locken took over his title as the Lord of Peranth. And then we have Mala, Sun Goddess and Lightbringer, sister and eternal rival to Deanna, Keeper of the Moon. Sten from Mistward, whose animal form is a pig. I think we talked about in a previous episode how funny it would be to have a really crappy like animal form.
Well, and he's like embarrassed to turn into it. And everything.
Yeah, he like won't shift. Can't blame him, I guess. And then we know of the 5 companions that Rowan has who like they all work for Maeve. We meet Gavriel, and then we hear mentions of the names Vaughn, Lorcan, and then the twins, who we don't have names for. And the last one that I have for this chapter section is Lyria, Rowan's mate, which we will be crying about later. But for now, here's John with the recap.
Guys, what a roller coaster. A roller coaster. So here we go. Here's your recap for chapters 20 to 35. And we kick it off with Selena finally shifting after Rowan gives her a hickey. Rowan also gets a little harsh with her, leading her to run away and try going off on her own, but she runs into 3 skinwalkers. Rowan catches up with her and forces her to shift or else they'll both be dead, which is her second successful shift. So great job.
Yay!
And she uses her fire for the first time to torch the skinwalkers. So that's pretty cool. We also learn a little about how this magic and power works, that each person has, quote unquote, a well of power that they draw from, and that their recovery time differs kind of depending on like how powerful or how deep that well is. And we find out that for Rowan, it takes him a full day to summon his full strength. And she was like really surprised about that. And it's over to Manon for the weather. Just kidding. It's the Battle of the Mounts. And as the handlers are bringing out all the wyverns, and they finally bring out big boy Titus, Iskra pushes Manon into the ring. And through some scuffle, Manon releases the bait wyvern who gives Titus a beating. I mean, gives him a straight like 1-2 to set him up for his finishing move that I've now dubbed as the throat munch. And Titus breathes his last. And Manon claims the scrappy bait beast as her own, calling him Abraxos. My man, started from the bottom, now we here, right? And we go over to Dorian with sports. Only it's not sports, it's the subtle skill of eavesdropping, where he learns everything about everything from Kale and Aedion's conversation. As we head back to Rowan and Selena, a 4th body has been found in the area, once again killed by the mysterious creature that Rowan can pinpoint. But Selena notes that she smelled the stench only twice before. So once actually when her parents were murdered, and another, I believe, in the barrow when she faces that like weird creature and has the memories and is like gets terrified by that. They rack their brains, they ask around town to try and find out what could be doing this. Meanwhile, back in Rifthold, Dorian and Sorsha are working on finding something to subdue Dorian's powers and are successful. They find an herb that increases the iron in the blood. We know the iron kind of deflects magic in a way. And in celebration, he kisses her. Wow. Crazy. And back to Manon, we find out she helps Abraxos. She fixes him up a little bit, gives him some dentures and new nub antlers. I'm sorry. We need to show Abraxos some respect here. So he gets some new spiky teeth and a new spiky tail. New teeth, new tail. Who dis? Am I right? All right. She's got to get him to fly sooner or later, or her grandmother is going to give her the axe. Back in Dornell, Rowan smiles. Selena has a dream, or rather a drememory, about the time when she burnt part of a library when she was younger. Her fire got the best of her. Sorsha grows a pair, slams a kiss on Dorian, so that's developing a little. Meanwhile, Kale is still getting some info from Aedion and Ren and Murtaugh. Ren was ambushed, but he escaped. The guys that are chasing him, they kind of hide out. Aedion ends up taking out all 6 of them single-handedly, so we're getting a little look of how dangerous Aedion can be. These men, they bear armor and the royal wyvern insignia, but Kale has never seen these guys or that armor, so there's some mystery with who these guys are. We also learned through Ren and Murtaugh that the 3 waves of power felt the day magic vanished. They form a rough triangle on the continent, presumably some kind of spell. Manon has some trouble getting Abraxos to fly, but ultimately succeeds. Back in Dornell, we briefly meet Gavriel, another one of May's warriors. Selena walks in on Rowan tattooing him, kind of awkward. We also find out that Selena's mother, Evelyn, befriended Emrys while she was actually there in Mistward. She was there for about a year working in the kitchens. She was there to try and convince Maeve to allow Demifay to have a place there to kind of like hide out or, be saved from what was going on over in the other continent. Selena saves Luca from the cave and the unknown giant lake monster dragon thing, thanks to Rowan. Rowan also gives her a sweet new sword that he finds in there. When they return safe, Selena goes off on Rowan, and he just kind of takes it because she's finally releasing how she's felt all this time about Nehemia's death. It's all finally kind of just coming out. We get a brief history as well from Rowan about his mate, really sad, and like how she was killed, and he and Selena agree to start on a path out of their sorrow together.
Wow. That is a lot to cover. Chapter 20, I guess.
Let's get it.
On that note, my first note from chapter 20 is the first time that Selena sees Rowan shift. Her question just had me laughing, but I'm always like so curious about stuff like this. I'm glad it was in the book, but it just made me laugh. She's like, "Where do your clothes go?" He's like, "Between somewhere. I don't particularly care."
Honestly, I'm really glad someone finally asked this question in like some sort of magical type book. I'm really upset we don't also actually get an answer. It's just kind of like a throwaway whatever.
Yeah, because magic.
Yeah,
It did kind of make me wonder, like, when Selena shifts, she's humanoid forms. Could she store 2 different outfits, like one for her Fae self, one for her, and just be like, "I'm Fae now, here's my awesome Fae armor, and now, I'm back, here's my civvies."
She would love that.
If anyone's going to do it, it would be Selena,
yeah.
and she would love the heck out of that. But
So true.
I would love it if like your clothes somehow transformed and like fit into your animal form. So like if he was wearing like these like gray trousers in his hawk form, he'd have on these like little gray
pants.
little pants and like a shirt, like this tunic or something as a hawk.
it'd be so cute. But imagine like the pig or someone else in their outfit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, imagine they were wearing like little pants and shirt or something. That'd be pretty funny. Anyway.
Hilarious.
that.
Okay, so also in chapter 20, we see the side of Rowan. Well, this is Selena, like, noticing this of Rowan, but it said, "Such dead, joyless eyes. She had a feeling she looked like that these days. She knew she had looked like that the night Kale had caught her gutting Archer in the tunnel. What had left Rowan soulless." So this was like... I think we kind of see the answer of this at the end of this little chapter chunk, but it's kind of like that first time you're seeing the similarities maybe between like where they both like emotionally are, and then that like super grows through all of this. So that was like my first note was like, okay, like we're finally learning something, or maybe gonna get something out of Rowan other than just like the super tough warrior type guy. So that was interesting. And then they have this whole like little brawl when he was trying to like get her to shift. It was the weirdest interaction for me because it said, "Faster than lightning, his hand shot out and she gagged, jolting as he grabbed her tongue between his fingers." It's like, what the heck? I mean, that's one way to get someone to stop talking.
Yeah.
I read that a few times, and I was like, it kind of turned cartoonish a little bit in my head, where it's like, "Wah," pull out their tongue so they can't talk.
I want to know how he did it so accurately, and he did it on his first try.
Practice.
Yeah, did he have her like mouth open? Like, how did he? You know what I mean?
Selena's a real tongue talker. Let me tell you.
Well, and to think he has like the super Fae strength, so for him to also like grab it and like with that control to not just like completely
Rip it
out or squish it or whatever, impressive and weird.
Yeah, and then right after that, he literally bites her.
Yeah. Chomp chomp. Not unlike Kyle's womp womp.
I was gonna say.
Just
Womp, womp, chomp, chomp.
Chomp chomp.
But yeah, it literally worked. It said she didn't feel the pain, didn't care about the blood or the flash of light. No, she wanted to rip his throat out, rip it out with her elongated canine she bared at him as she finished shifting and roared. And that's how it like ended, like that chapter.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, stuff is gonna happen this one. I'm so excited. And then we get into chapter 21 and she can't shift again. And I was like, dang it, I thought it was gonna happen.
Womp womp.
Yeah. Womp womp. Chomp chomp.
First you chomp chomp, then you womp womp.
Then you
Womp
won't.
You gotta chomp before you can womp.
That's our next t-shirt.
Anyway,
I'm crying already. We're like 5 minutes into this episode.
would you like to start with the trauma?
Yes.
While you're crying.
While I'm
great
crying,
moment.
I had a bunch of highlights from chapter 21, but I ended up just kind of condensing them into a little section I like to call the trauma. Because that's what all these highlights were. The first one was Rowan saying, the people you love are just weapons that will be used against you. And then he, like, jokingly, I assume, talks about, like, taking a whip to Selena. And she says, if you ever take a whip to me, I will skin you alive. And then at the end of this conversation, he literally tells her, you're worthless. You would probably have been more useful to the world if you'd actually died 10 years ago.
That was a rough line.
Yeah, she was just wondering what had left him soulless. And then he turns around and says that to her. So
I put that, like, I think that line even was made, especially in that conversation, a little more poignant when we later learn that he was severely depressed for 10 years. That's probably something that he has thought about himself. And
Yeah,
her
100%.
asking, like, why are you so soulless, brought that to the surface of his mind.
yeah, so that's a recurring theme in this
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff he says to her is stuff he's probably saying also to himself almost at the same time.
Projecting.
Yeah. Yep.
for sure.
For sure. But this is the first time we see Rowan's power in this chapter. So it said a pulse beat against her, nipping, smelling of snow and pine. Rowan's power taunting hers, not like her fire, but a gift of ice and wind. And so my first thought was maybe Rowan could help Dorian conceal don't feel one day if they ever meet, since he also has like an ice-ish power. So that's cool. And then I also thought the smell of snow and pine would make like a great candle. That was my
It would,
next
though.
thought. So
It really would.
we'll get our friend over at Mood Reader Candles. If you're listening,
Yes.
go
Get Katie on the job.
make us a
Please make us a
Rowan's
candle.
power candle.
Rowan's Pines.
Rowan's Musk. If there was a candle called Rowan's Musk, I feel like that thing would be sold out. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Sarah even gave us the ingredients right there. So
yeah.
Easy.
I mean,
Just a little snow, a little pine. There
talk
you go.
about melting in my hoodie.
Oh, and then she was talking about in this moment as well, her moment with Nehemia. It was, I think this whole like chapter chunk that we're talking about today was really just like not the beginning necessarily, but definitely like, at least I hope, the end of her, I don't know, coming to realization with Nehemia, or her seeing what had
Yeah.
happened kind of at the end where it ends. But this is where she had told Rowan that Nehemia was dead, and it said that she hadn't spoken the words "she is dead" since the day after Nehemia had been taken from her, but she was dead and Selena missed her. It was just really sad. I also understand that like Kale and Dorian and all of those people are still alive, but she also isn't with them all the time, and so I think it just like shows how deep her and Nehemia's friendship really was too, because she is alone, but like I get that she'll never see Nehemia again, but like that really gets to her through all of this when she talks about like feeling alone, like she really lost a friend, and that's just really sad. So
Her soul friend.
yeah, it really does get to me, like every time she brings it up or talks about it, like that specifically is like the saddest thing.
So sad. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later too.
Yeah,
But in,
yeah, we will.
In chapter 22, I had so many notes about this through this chapter section, but I really love the way that their magic is described. And John talked about this a little bit in the recap, but where Rowan's saying all magic has a bottom, a breaking point. For those with weaker gifts, it is easily depleted and easily refilled. They can access most of their power at once. But for those with stronger gifts, it can take hours to hit the bottom to summon their powers at full strength. And then that's when we learn that for Rowan, it takes a full day, which is just crazy. But it's cool that like you get this way of almost measuring how powerful some of the other characters are. Like, I don't know that that's something that you necessarily learn. It's not like for enemies, it'd be like, oh yeah, I heard it takes a whole week or something. Like,
It's gonna take me 2 weeks.
it's probably not information that anybody shares, but again, that almost seemed like a point of maybe trust between Rowan and Selena, that he would even tell her that. But then, yeah, it's just kind of a cool way, I think, to be able to kind of gauge that. Because a lot of the time I feel like in fantasy books, they're like, he's the most powerful, or he's so powerful. And you're like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, and I thought, because Rowan had asked, how do you see your magic? And she said, like a well. And so I thought he was going to tell her he sees it different, or like everyone kind of has their own way of seeing or measuring power or whatever. But he kind of like went along with that same analogy. So I'm assuming it's probably similar for everyone. I don't know. Guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, this is pretty cool to reread, and also super interesting that it seems very similar to how they describe the drop in Crescent City, because they kind of talk about how there's like a bottom and then you have to like come back up or something. It's a little different with like the whole anchor concept in Crescent City, but yeah, I'll have to pay closer attention because I don't remember.
When you finally read Crescent City 2?
Well, that and just farther along in this series too.
Oh.
Because I don't remember if they go into that in more depth.
Yeah, but there'd probably be a lot of things in this book you would find interesting if you just finished Crescent City. I was even texting Connor today about something from ACOTAR. You just,
Oh, that's funny.
Don't worry, John. I haven't read it yet either. So
Yeah, good.
Yeah, Kyle's way behind.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. What the heck?
That's rude.
Okay, so they are running from the skinwalkers, which was a really interesting concept of a creature. First of all, Kyle and I were talking how it's kind of like the whisperers from The Walking Dead. Did you guys watch The Walking Dead?
Oh, which
I
one?
never finished it.
Oh, the whispers. Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, where
Yep.
they wear the zombies basically and hide in the zombie
Oh.
hordes. So it was kind of like they had literally sewn together humans to have like an outfit, which was creepy. But that's what that reminded me of. But I just it's describing this like super creepy character and like all the things, and it's like super intense. And then it just said, come out, come out. One of them hissed so close it could have been inside the tree with them. And I just started cracking up. Like, come out wherever you are. Like, it just made it funny and not scary anymore. And then the rest of that, like the terror of the moment, like the fear was gone for me, but it was funny.
Ready or not, here I come.
Exactly.
I'm gonna count to 10 and come find you.
So just hope you're not hiding from like a killer. If you're with Lauren, if they say something goofy, she'll start giggling and give away your hiding spot.
Yeah.
Come on, be like, that was so cringe.
It was funny though. And then so they she shifts, which is cool, and they're running away, and they jump off of the cliff, and it said, as she fell, her hair whipping from her face, thrust her hands toward the skinwalkers. Surprise, she hissed, and the world erupted in blue fire. And I was like, oh, that is freaking epic. Like, she gave also a cheesy line moment, but it was cool.
Surprise, mother.
Exactly. Loved it. And then this next line, it was like a one-liner that Rowan said when he's kind of still describing the magic, as far as he was proud of her, I guess, that she didn't scorch herself or anything. She just killed the skinwalkers. And he said, people sometimes can't tell friend from foe when they're handling that much magic. And it was just one line, but it just felt like that's important, in the sense that maybe as she's learning her magic one day, she's gonna lose control or something. I don't know, maybe it felt like some foreshadowing there. So I'm just pointing it out because I thought it was worth pointing out.
I didn't know, I thought the same thing, but I didn't even think it specifically for her, because she's being trained to control magic, but Dorian's not.
Oh.
I was kind of worried that
yeah.
I've already sort of said oh well, Sorcha's gonna die sort of thing. But if it was him, that would make it even worse if he loses control, because he seems to have a lot of magic in him.
Yeah,
He can't run.
He's just suppressing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have some notes on how I felt because he literally turns his heart to ice and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought he was kind of taking maybe a evil turn or something. So maybe that does go with that. I don't know. Just some unhinged theories.
That's so interesting, because when I first read this, I thought it was Rowan saying that because of something that had happened to him in the past.
Maybe.
That was how I interpreted it, but I didn't even think about it being a foreshadowing thing for one of the other characters.
Yeah.
I was just thinking because she's literally can't control it, and she just used an insane amount out of nowhere. And so he's like, hey, just be careful, because that's kind of how
Please
I took
don't
it.
burn me alive.
It would either have to be something she does where it's oh, she does accidentally hurt someone and him or whatever, or on the other hand where she like surprises him by being super good at like maybe she can make like a huge thing of fire and like spare certain people. But
Surprise.
Surprise. Yeah, absolutely. And then also in this moment, she starts talking to Rowan about Sam, which was super heartbreaking. And it was just every time Sam or anything comes up from like Arabin or Sam or any of the stuff that basically happened in The Assassin's Blade, I cannot imagine reading it after this book. Like they literally just told the whole story of Sam. And then later, Kale also tells the whole story of what happens with Sam and Arabin. So it's like reading it after this book, I feel like everything, I would have already read the book. Like basically, just like they summarize it in this one. But having read it and understanding like what she went through and stuff, and having just read it as well, I think that this hit a little harder than if I read it at the beginning of the series and I didn't even care about Selena or Sam. So this is me being pro reading it third, since we're still having that conversation.
I just basically agreed with you. I said like if his story wasn't already a little bit spoiled, like by the time we did read Assassin's Blade, then this would have like super spoiled it because it went into more detail about what happened. Like we knew he was dead, but we didn't know the specifics, which is what she goes over here.
Yeah, that was part of the struggle that I had reading it fourth. But there was, I have a note later in this section too about it was something else that I was like, I don't think I even caught this the first time around or would have thought about this if I hadn't read Assassin's Blade before this book. But
Yeah.
And then chapter 24, this is when Kale and Aedion are in the like tombs to have like a secret meeting or whatever, and it said, and the skull-shaped bronze knocker Mort didn't move or speak at all. Even though Kale wore the eye of Elena in his throat, the knocker remained frozen. Perhaps Mort only answered to those with Brannon Galathinius blood in their veins. But I was like, does Kale even know about Mort? Or is this someone else's POV just like announcing the things? And then also I thought Mort talked to Nehemia, because like when Selena introduced Nehemia to Mort and then she asked a bunch of questions to Mort, even though Selena wasn't, like Selena was there, I guess, but like.
well, so I thought Kale and Dorian both knew about Mort.
Because they were like in the tomb, obviously with the like the portal and whatever, but they were in that room.
Oh, I don't think Nehemia talked to Mort like by herself. When Selena brought Nehemia down there to the tomb, Mort was like, you brought a friend, and then they talked then. But I think it was only while Selena was there, at least as far as we know.
Well, and I keep thinking about how Elena and Nehemia had a conversation, you know, like that one little mini chapter, and Kyle said it had to have been POV Mort because whatever. And so I keep thinking that was Nehemia and Mort together, even though we have no confirmation that was actually Mort. So maybe that's also where my mind was.
Well, and even though he has awareness of things happening around him or whatever, he doesn't
Yeah.
always acknowledge whoever is there. So like I wouldn't be surprised if Nehemia had gone down there and talked to Elena or whatever, because apparently Elena can just appear to people. I'm trying to see if I can find it.
I
Did
did
you find
confirm it is Kale's point of view.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, yeah, I was also confused about that after reading your comment, because I'm like, because I remember reading Selena saying something like Dorian and Kale weren't ready yet to like meet somebody like Mort, but then I don't ever remember either Dorian and Kale talking with him or even her telling them about him.
Well, so at the end of Crown of Midnight, she's talking to Dorian, I believe. This is chapter 53 of Crown of Midnight. When Selena finished telling Dorian the story she told Kale, albeit a much more limited version, he let out a long sigh and fell back onto his bed. So that she's having this whole conversation with Dorian. And she says, in the tomb, there is someone who might offer you some advice on how to control it, who might have some information about the kind of power you've inherited. Right then, though, she didn't exactly know how to explain more to him. So she just said, someday soon, you and I could go down there and meet him. And Dorian says, is he? And she cuts him off and says, you'll see when we get there, if he deigns to speak to you. It might take a while for him to decide he likes you. So I don't think we see an interaction of them going down there together, but she does kind of tell him about Mort.
Yeah.
And how it was described alludes to maybe she had told Kale about Mort.
Because Dorian got the more limited version.
Right.
Yeah, so you'd think she had told Kale in detail that there's a door knocker that talks to you, named Mort, because she didn't tell Dorian the name. So
Right.
that would make sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm glad that
Question
was cleared up.
answered.
Yay. Thanks, guys.
Good job, detectives.
Go book club. I love it. So they're having this whole conversation, Aedion and Kale, where Kale again just starts spouting out all the hidden secrets of Selena's life, aka Aylin's life. And it was just like the first sentence where it switched POVs. Dorian stood in the shadow of the stairwell, listening, and not quite wanting to accept that Kale was in the tomb with Aedion Ash River. And so it was like the first moment, and I was like, no, not Dorian, oh my god, because like he's literally saying all the things. And so he now knows everything, which is not where I expected the story to go at all. He like doesn't react. Like he's obviously mad in the moment, and it feels like he's, left alone, has no friends. It said he ripped his cold magic from the air and turned it inward, wrapping it around his heart. And then he just like doesn't really react the rest of the time. Like you don't really see him be upset. He doesn't seem to like want to go research it. He's just like doing his thing with Sorsha and figuring out his own magic. It's almost like, has he like hardened his heart? Like he just doesn't care about anything? It's kind of the vibes I was getting. Like, does he even care? Does he even care about Sorsha? Is he just like going through the motions of his own weird suppressed depression? Like, I don't know.
More trauma.
I know.
I think that's exactly what it was. Like you said, he hardened his heart with his magic, wrapping it in ice and not having to, because he has his own stuff to do. Like he has his magic he's trying to hide. He's worried his father will find it. He's worried that someone's going to find out about Sorsha. He doesn't have time or energy to worry about what's happening to the girl that he lost to Kale and their relationship and whatever they're doing.
Maybe he's just thinking like, what could he even do about it, because she's gone. Like he doesn't know when she's coming back or if she's planning to do anything or what she's planning to do. But I don't know, if I were him, I'd be spiraling and just I would be over analyzing every conversation I had with her, trying to figure out if she dropped hints. Like
I talk about this in like my ending thoughts and theories, but part of me could see Dorian going either way now. Like I could see him being like, eventually, like he still wants to be a good guy. Eventually he's cool with the group, whatever, and things continue kind of as is, I guess, necessarily where he's kind of on the side because, he's the crown prince, but he's also on team good guys. Or he completely flips on everyone and has hardened his heart and he just turns evil like his dad and is doing that whole side of things. Like I feel like he's at like a tipping point. It could go either way because they've left him out of things, because he's not part of the group and he instead becomes bitter and hardened his heart, whatever, and becomes super evil. So I hope it doesn't do that, but I just feel like that's kind of where he's at. That's the kind of weird middle ground he is.
Lauren's on Dorian watch.
Yes, for sure. And then we just get a lot about Aedion in this next little chunk of chapters, and this is like fully turned me from skeptical, I don't know about this guy, to like love this dude and I want to be his friend forever. And the rest of this whole chapters, which again, because of Sarah J. Maas, it always makes me a little nervous to say something like that. I love this character. But for now, I'm going to say that I love him. But this is when he is meeting with Ren and Murtaugh, and they're doing their whole rebellion thing, and it said, for a heartbeat their eyes met, and he knew that Ren felt what he often did, what he tried to keep buried. They had survived when so many had not, and no one else could understand what it was like to bear it unless they had also lost just as much. I think you're just seeing a lot of his own personal trauma and like what he's going through, as well as Ren, as well as really everyone from Terrasen. It's not just like a Selena, like she has some more recent stuff with like Nahimi and whatever, but like it's literally an entire country. All these people have their own personal reasons to fight for the king, not just like to get behind Selena and to, defeat him because he's mean, but like also like their own personal reasons. And it feels, I don't know, like you want to care about each one of them. I was really feeling that connection with him, but also I could see when Selena comes back, hopefully, and meets all these people, that's a group, a connection that they all have, and they can all, like when you look into someone's eyes and you can tell that they understand it because they've also gone through it, kind of a thing. So I'm excited for hopefully if that happens.
I feel like this is a huge reason for her kind of seeming like so scared of who she is and like her birthright and to return to Terrasen, because like the king obliterated her family and her court and her home, and it's like starting to paint a better picture of why she's so frightened and so scared of what we come to find out is like a pretty serious birthright and destiny, right?
Well, and she was scared of it even as a kid, like obviously, but like she said before all of that. Like, I don't want to be
Right.
queen. You know, she
Yeah.
never really wanted that for her future. I also think because she's not with these people, she's feeling very alone in all of those feelings. So I'm hoping when she gets together with others who also share the same sentiments and understandings, that will help her story. But yeah, keeping with this Aedion and Ren thing, it did say, and Aedion, not Ren, was favored to take the blood oath to Aelin, the oath of pure submission, the oath that would have sealed Aedion as her lifelong protector, the one in whom she could have absolute trust. Everything he possessed, everything he was, should have belonged to her. And this was like, okay, I like really like this guy. I just feel like he's gonna like commit his whole life. And we see these like flashbacks where he's even with her as a child and like, you know, all the things.
Yeah.
It's just when you get the first impression of him, like last episode, I was like, I don't know about this guy because he has this reputation. And now I'm like, okay, I think I'm okay with this guy.
It was pretty cool in her little dream memory that he was like sitting with her on her bed when her parents were like talking about sending her to school or whatever. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I thought that was kind of funny. And yeah, on that, I had a note that Rowan and the other warriors, like they've given a blood oath to Maeve. So there's like, if we relate those two, like how that relationship would be, it's like just as a point of reference. But I think it also speaks to the seriousness and loyalty of Aedion and what he's had to go through by like faking his general status for Aderlin, basically, and like what he's had to do and go through, and like we've learned how he's faked all this kind of stuff like up to this point.
Like later, whenever he goes into Selena's house, Caleb gives him a
he's
minute.
just like taking it all
you
in.
know?
Yeah,
And that I just feel like hits so much more after knowing this about him and how much he sees hope for the future after 10 years of faking it and going through God knows what to get to this point. So I really loved that. But as he was walking away from this meeting, it said Aedion made to walk away but looked back. Just two cloaked figures, one hunched and the other tall and armed. The first shred of Aelin's court. The court he'd raised for her to shatter Aderlin's chains. And I was like, yes, I love this. But also, like, what a place to start in the literal slums of Aderlin. You know, like in a cloak with your daggers hidden. Like, that's exactly where Selena was. So it's like, it all is going to go from there. Like, it's, I don't know. I'm really excited for it. So
That's so cool.
Chapter 25, she's back with Rowan. This is Selena and Rowan. And it said, I don't even remember what she was thinking at this moment, but it just said she didn't know how he had read her thoughts. And I was like, it's because he can actually read your thoughts, babe. I don't actually know if that's true.
But it seems like it.
Seems like it, like multiple times. And I didn't point them all out in this chapter chunk because I feel like I would have been pointing it out left and right.
There's too many, yeah.
Here's another italics. Here it is again. You know, it even happens with Abraxos and Manon for a second in one of their conversations. But I don't know if that's just because it's like she's talking to an actual dragon. Or not dragon, a wyvern. And so I don't know if that's like actually going to happen. Does in other books with dragons. So that's why maybe, but I don't know. Anyways, I definitely think Rowan can read minds somehow. Or maybe she can, because we're learning kind of some of her powers too. So, and then it just said her parents had been assassinated. She'd seen the wounds, but the smell in their room had been so similar. She shook her head as if to clear it, to shake the creeping feeling moving up from her spine. And so I know in this chapter they were talking about the smell of the beast that had like sucked out the power of everyone. And she was like talking about where she remembered the smell. I didn't know if this was actually the moment with the beast whenever he like brought up her memory of like when she was fighting it in the like the burrows or whatever, or if she was actually remembering the time when her parents had died. And then if that was the case, maybe the smell she was remembering would have been maybe like Arabin, like going with Kyle's theory that maybe Arabin killed her parents. I don't know, maybe that's a really far stretch, but I thought I'd point it out because that's what my mind went to. But
I think because of the way the smell is described, both in this instance and even though we haven't really talked about it, I think it was earlier in these chapters, but the same smell and like taste that Manon is getting from the men that they're working around, or like the meat that's sort of tainted. Because our other theory for what was there in the barrows was a Valg, was what we maybe said it was, because that had
that's
been
what
discussed
you said it
earlier in the
was.
series.
I don't
thought
think it's that.
You don't think okay? I thought I had
We
convinced
don't put my name on your theories.
I got my own unhinged theories to stand
I think
behind.
it might be that, regardless. For both of them. I think it might be here in her memory / the Mistward area. Valg there. And with Manon and the men and the meat and whatever and the goats, I guess.
Chapter 26. This is, again, just, I said it earlier, this is literally the Assassin's Blade being summarized in one big old paragraph. I'm not going to read the whole thing, I don't think, but this is Kale, and he had said, like, he'd never asked Selena why, when she was appointed champion, her first priority wasn't to hunt down her master and cutting him into pieces for what he had done to her lover, Sam Cortland. And then he, like, explains how Arabin basically organized the whole thing and how Sam died and, like, whatever, and he knew all the names and, like, had figured it all out. And I was like, well, if only you told her, like, straight up, Kale. She technically doesn't know. I think she probably does. She probably has a feeling, or if she actually followed that instinct, maybe she would, like, figure it out. But she doesn't know, like, point blank in the exact detail that Kale just, like, put it out there. And they just never had that conversation, and so she literally doesn't know. But this is also another reason I'm really glad we read Assassin's Blade 3rd, because again, this is the entirety of Assassin's Blade right here in a lovely little summary.
I don't know that I even picked up on any of this stuff the first read because we hadn't read the Assassin's Blade yet, so I wasn't really like connecting all of these names. I mean, you kind of know who these people are, but I don't think I'd really put all that together. But I was so confused when I first read through this because she and Kale had a whole conversation about this in Crown of Midnight, but in that conversation she still didn't think it was Arabin. So, like, I don't know how he suddenly, if he pieced it together from their conversation and just didn't say anything. Like, I don't know. But when he asked her, like, do you know who betrayed you? She was like, nope. I was still kind of confused about how he sounds so confident about knowing it was Arabin. Or maybe he did know it during that conversation and he just didn't say it.
Well, and Selena came into that conversation more concerned about Rourke Farron. Right,
to, like, because that's who they were talking about. Yeah.
So I guess they just brushed over the Arabin part and Kale just didn't mention it.
Well, I mean, I think he tells her that they, like, assumed that Arabin had Wesley killed for his own agenda or whatever so that he could work with the new crime lord whenever they ascended. But I don't know, maybe that was the point that Kale had, like, connected that information, but he just didn't, maybe he didn't say it because he didn't know if it was true at the time. I don't know. But the fact that he's saying he was surprised that her first mission wasn't hunting him down and cutting him to pieces, but, like, she didn't know.
Well, and then for him to say at the end, he being Arabin, he must have wanted her to rot away in Endivere until he decided to free her, and she crawled back to him, his eternally a loyal servant. And so first of all, Arabin's is the worst and probably going to do that.
Yeah.
But, like, how does Kale know that?
Right. That's what I was wondering.
I don't know. But
I don't know. Maybe he has looked into it more.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe, like, studied, because he's been going off on his own for however many weeks to study all of her life, basically, and figure out all this stuff. So maybe he learned things, but... Yeah. Anyways, I just literally don't know. It's just a crazy moment. But I am very glad to have read it before this book. I'm confirmed on that theory. So this is when they go into her apartment, which again, loved, like, knowing all the backstory of the apartment even, and the things from reading The Assassin's Blade. But this is when Aedion needs a moment to, like, take it all in and is finally, like, getting to learn a little bit about Aelin and her life, or Selena and her life before this moment. And it said it was her apartment, whether she accepted or hated her past. She decorated the dining table in Terrasen royal colors, green and silver. And I was like, okay, so maybe green won't be all bad. Because right now, literally everything green for me, and I even mark it down later in this, like, chapter chunk, everything green has been evil Disney magic. Evil is green. But if Terrasen's colors are literally going to be green and silver, I assume some of the good guys will end up wearing that. I don't know. Maybe that theory's out the window.
As a follow-up, I just tried to Google, like, how Kale knows, and it sounds like the internet is sort of in agreement, at least from what I just read, that he probably pieced it together during that conversation about Rourke Farron, because he and his men were the ones that, like, went to clean up afterward or whatever. So he already had a lot of details about what had gone down. But yeah, it sounds like filling in the gaps with Selena, he must have kind of figured it out from that conversation. And then, yeah, maybe he did look it up afterward. I don't know.
All right.
I had two nerd moments in this reading, and this is one of them. So let me put my nerd glasses on. They mentioned a cooling box, which Aedion was impressed by. And I was like, in the last few books, like, satisfied with where I landed mentally. With, like, pocket watches and stuff, I could get all that. But cooling boxes are so much more recent. Granted, like, he's impressed she has it, so it's not commercially available to everyone. But that's like 10 years before cars. Like, that's not far away. So, I don't know. That was just a nerdy moment for me.
I mean, 10 years before cars in our world that we live
In our world, yeah.
With no
This is a-
magic.
Yeah,
With
it's
no
a different
magic.
world, different stuff
But
going
so
on.
far, their technology is matching up to what our world would be feasibly, which
Sure.
obviously it's hard to create like an entirely new world. You base it off of reality in some respects,
But we were reading, and he was in the office, and I was on the couch, and he literally came in the room, and he was like, "A cooling box? Are you kidding me?" And I was like, "Oh God, what's about
because
the
it's not
cooling
just
box?"
like a box with ice in it. It's like whatever. We don't have to get too into it. I would just be remiss if I left it out.
The people are expecting these comments.
Yes,
I
that's
know.
right.
Well, and then I was like, "Are you done with your notes?" And he's like, "Yeah." Oh wait, I didn't write down the cooling box, and like came in here specifically to write it down.
Because my only real note was from the very end of the chapter where we see Dorian and Sorsha and the smooch that Dorian gives to Sorsha before he leaves. Which just locked in my prediction. Like, she's for sure dead now. If they never kissed, I would be like, all right, well, it was like a fleeting thing. But now I'm like, they kissed.
Gosh.
The
You're trying to lead
slightest
me.
bit, yeah, the
Yeah.
slightest bit of romance.
Yeah.
Well, and it wasn't this kiss that did it for me; it was the next one. That,
Yes,
like,
that was for
that's
sure.
what I was like,
Oh, when like
okay.
she
Oh,
kisses him.
yeah.
Here's Kyle's theory.
Yeah,
That was that
because
moment.
that was the one that I was like, oh yeah, like how exactly, like I said, they're gonna be comfortable before they're hurt, and I think they're about to get into like this can kiss now, and then it's hammer's gonna fall, or the guillotine or the axe or whatever. I don't know what kind of thing is gonna happen. but-
You're breaking my heart. Nothing's even happened yet.
Moving on, we can move on from
God.
my depressing theories.
Chapter 27 then. This is back to Manon, and it said the overseer grabbed her, but she slashed with her iron-tipped fingers and sliced his hand open. He cursed, but Manon kept walking, licking his blood off her nails. She almost spat it out vile. The blood tasted rotten, as if it had curdled or festered inside a corpse for days. And then it talks about how she looked at the rest of her hand and why is it too dark? Her other 13 have been killing these guys or sneaking them off and drinking their blood and whatever else they're doing over there. And and so it's so my theory on what's happening to these people is maybe they're like that creature that we found under the clock tower that was in the jails, and he completely turned weird and crazy. We know that creature, because we got its POV, that it had been tortured and things had been done to it, so maybe it's not the same situation. My only guess is where it could be the same is it's to the obsidian that was from the ring, under the clock tower, and it was around it, or how this whole the Omega is basically not the whole thing made of obsidian, but there's that big bridge that is, and it's very around there. So I don't know what else is happening to all these creatures and things, but something is making them gross. But
The towers that we learn about later, I don't know if you went back and looked at the map to see the locations where they said they were. The wastes that the witches are in, that's in the triangle. It's right, there's Briarcliff, there's the wastes, that's all in there. So I don't know if that might have something to do with it too, with whatever spell they say might have taken place.
I don't know. But the people and the food and everything tastes gross, I guess.
Yeah,
To the witches who eat those things.
except for the flowers.
Oh, that's just for for Praxis. I don't know. Was he eating them, or was he just smelling them and
he just
rolling
liked
around?
them.
He's
Right?
just
That's-
playing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's catnip for smell it and they get all woo.
Okay, that's very cute. We just got our cat some catnip toys before we left for vacation, and she was just living her best
Love
life. Anyway, okay. In chapter 27, my only note was about Manon and Abraxos and how she's building iron spikes and teeth for him to match hers. And
Yeah.
then, it's just so cute.
I love that you think that's cute.
They match.
I was like, oh, yeah, this guy's going to be totally BA. It's going to be so cool. And you're like, oh, but they match.
I only felt that way. I'm reading the whole thing and I'm like, that's so cool. And then she's like, and iron nails like mine. And I'm like, oh.
Okay, to be they're not painting their nails together, just to be
But they could. They
just to
could
be
now.
clear.
Gunmetal gray.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To roll
choice of
around in the
alloys.
flowers.
What color goes with your scales?
Oh gosh.
I have been like painting our daughter's nails a lot over the last couple weeks because it started on vacation. I like painted all the niece's nails on vacation. And so anyway, that's where my head's at right now. But I'm like, oh. But right after that, she's still talking to Abraxos and she says, once all that is done, you and I are going to learn how to fly and then we'll stain this kingdom red. And I was like, okay, Manon.
Yeah, baby.
See, that's what I thought the whole time, though, was like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, this is going to be epic. Not like, oh, it's so cute. Oh, then, yeah.
But they're going to match while they do it.
Yeah, they are. I'm still a little confused on Baba Yellowleg's timeline with her being like the last born witch, but then they're training witches that are under 70, like new witches. And I know we talked about that, I think even just the last episode with how old Manon is and whatever, but I'm just putting it out there that I still don't understand. I don't know that you have the answers. I just don't understand.
Was she, so this thought just came to me, was she the last born witch of her clan?
Her claim was that she was the last born witch of the Witch Kingdom.
Yeah.
But I'm Googling
So
it.
that makes me think that she was just like making something up.
I'm finding a couple of different things. So a few people say it's like a marketing gimmick or whatever because she's traveling with the literal circus or whatever. like come on down. It's the last born witch of the Witch Kingdom, you know. And she doesn't want anybody to know her like actual history. But then someone else was saying they think she might have been the last to actually be born in the Witch Kingdom before the Kraken curse. Like how the witches
like,
were all cursed to like a
actually in
nomadic
the kingdom.
existence. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that would
I don't
make
know.
sense,
But she's
too.
definitely
Yeah.
way older than like Manon
Yeah.
and whoever else.
So like the last born in the Witch Kingdom, not of the Witch Kingdom.
Potentially,
there we
yes.
go.
Although
Yeah.
I don't remember the timeline on like when the Kraken curse happened.
Yeah, same.
But that would
I'm
make sense.
Googling some more. But yes. Okay, so maybe not. I think that witch curse situation happened like 500 years before the events of this book. She cursed the Witch Kingdom, though. Yeah, so maybe that's what she meant. Or maybe she was just making it up. I don't know.
And Baba was 700-ish?
I think, yeah.
I think it's what we've it's
crazy.
yeah. Yeah, I think there was a lot of witches that fought in that war because it said that all of the ones that did would keep their iron teeth out all the time
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
never
right.
like
Yeah.
retracted them. So I assume
Yeah.
that they wouldn't just say that about just Baba. I think they said like a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on for just a second.
Okay, have fun.
Oh, my God. These peach rings are so soft.
I just got myself peach rings from you.
Oh, my God.
Those are your
This is
favorite
the
days?
softest. Yeah. This is the softest bag of peach rings I've ever had. Lauren, I'm so proud.
I got them for our candle so I could take pictures. I haven't actually
Nice.
eaten them yet.
Eat it right now. Live reaction.
Have you had them at all yet?
No.
Nope.
This is your first.
You have to
Kyle-
do it now.
Do you want some, Kyle?
Yeah, I'll come and grab one and I'll come back. We'll do
Oh, my God. I'm so excited. You guys. I will not be upset if you don't like them.
I don't know that I've eaten enough peach rings to tell you if it's better than others, but I can tell you if it's.
I
good
might
and
be
it's-
Pliability.
disappointed, but I won't be upset if you don't like them.
Connor, do you have some? We can all eat one together.
There's like 8 bags of them in my tiny room.
I hope they're not stale for you.
They don't feel stale. No, these ones don't.
What am I supposed to say?
It was a long con. He gave us the worst one.
Yeah, I've been doing it this whole time just so you guys eat it and are like, God, this tastes awful.
Wasted $1.50 on this.
I got you, you fuckers.
It was so good, John.
Sounded so genuine.
I feel like
So-
I'm part of the group.
I mean, really though.
Finally in the
now.
Peach Ring Book Club.
I think these ones might be a little stale. Either that or
that's
they're
fair.
a little tougher than my usual peach rings.
They're also from Chicago. We bought these
That
in
is true.
Chicago. So it's Chicago's
So-
fault.
Yeah,
It might very well be. But
blame
they're
it on
good.
Chicago.
I'm getting definite notes of peach.
Yep, definite peach notes.
It's
Yeah,
important.
Good. Pretty good.
You have a solid taste profile.
You picked up on
Really,
that, did you?
really astute.
Someday I'd love to go to like a real fancy restaurant and say something stupid like that just to see the look on there.
Lots of fruity legs.
Oh wow, did
Yeah.
you season this steak? Wow.
Has a creamy body.
Sir, that's a salad.
Sir, it's a salad.
That's an incredible joke. Sir, that's a salad. A creamy body. Holy crap.
Oh,
That's good stuff. All right.
They were good though.
crying again.
They are.
Kyle, what about Abraxas's name?
Yeah, this is my other nerdy moment. I meant to put it earlier, but since we're here in one of the
Yeah.
chapters that involves him, I'm one of the people in the world really put meaning into names, and I'm not sure if Sarah is that way. But I have noticed at least one trend is a lot of her main characters have original names. If you look up some of their names, it says like this name was made for this book. A lot of them are normal names, and those all die. I haven't found any names that have been like made for other books or just already existed, but Abraxas is really close to one, and it's an interesting one, I thought, because the original one is a AS at the end instead of OS, like a super old name from the Roman Empire, I think like 2nd century, but it was to refer to what they thought was a supreme god that they worshipped. And it went through like all other mythologies like Egyptians and the Basilidians and all this other stuff like Gnostic, Wiccan, whatever. They really liked it because it was written with the 7 Greek letters, which calculated out to 365, and they thought that was really nice because it was how many days were in the year. But it's also the name that abracadabra comes from, which I thought was interesting, that a witch is naming her wyvern something that would basically be abracadabra. But
Nice.
That is
I
amazing.
I just thought it was interesting.
Nice. I like it.
And she can fly on her broom and say abracadabra.
Right. That's why I was like, well, Abrax. And I knew I had heard it before, but I had to look up what it was. It was like, I knew that name. It's also in Harry Potter. I think it was Draco Malfoy's grandfather was named Abraxas, but
What?
Yeah.
No. Really? I'm
think so.
surprised I didn't know that. Hold on. I'm Googling.
She's fact checking Kyle.
I am fact checking.
Whoa.
It is.
this is where it all ends. Okay, I'm good. Never mind. That's where it all falls
I'm
apart.
mind blown by that.
Interesting.
Abraxas Malfoy. He was a friend of Professor Slughorn.
Slughorn. What a dude.
What?
I don't know. Slughorn.
Wow. Okay.
That's the guy who like was Willy Wonka's nemesis, right?
Yeah. Slugworth.
Yeah.
I think they worked together.
Yeah, they did. He was pitched as his nemesis, I guess, to the kids.
Frenemy.
Yeah. Anyway, Abracadabra. Thought it was a funny name for a witch's mount.
That's incredible.
Why does she name it Abraxas? Like, does she give a reason why? Or does she just...
Yeah, she does.
I don't
I'll
remember.
look it up for you.
Yeah, she doesn't. I don't remember. I should have looked that up when I was researching, but
It's in here. She says it. I think it's twice actually in this chapter section. Please hold.
Is that our hold music?
Okay. Manon named her wyvern Abraxos after the ancient serpent who held the world between his coils at the behest of the three-faced goddess.
I remember that now.
Yeah.
So that could also be like a supreme god or being in their own mythology.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe that is where she got it from. I just don't feel like she doesn't use like other mythology names or names that exist in other things like that.
Yeah, I thought she said it one other time. I don't know if it was phrased differently or if there was any other information. But I thought it was when she told Abraxas that was his name. Like, and I named you this because... But yeah, anyway.
Interesting. Okay, chapter 28. We're finally moving on to chapter 28. I think it would make sense that it takes like these innocents and like explaining the whole situation to her and that there's innocent people and this beast is whatever and we can stop it, and playing to her emotions in that way to like rile her up so that she would shift to do the things, because that's exactly what Arabin did to make her commit murder, basically, with like giving her, this guy killed these people and raped this lady and whatever, and that's how like it explained in Assassin's Blade. Sam had said they were basically put into becoming assassins through that way. So I feel like it makes sense that that's where it started. I really hope that she'll find a different way other than anger, like that kind of vibes to figure it out, because I think that will be like also a healing moment for her. But I felt like that made sense. I didn't write it here, but I also thought it was interesting that she's basically just with another random person trying to hunt down another thing that's just killing people randomly, like she was with Kale in Throne of Glass. Like, we're literally just seeing like
Full circle.
almost the same story, just in a different place, and she's brought on to like help solve the murder mysteries. So I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. But
Scooby-Doo and the gangs back together.
yeah, for real.
But this chapter and this whole scene with them running 20 miles in their Fae form, it like made my heart burst, and it just reminded me of her riding on the stolen Asterian mails. No, that's a different book.
That's a different story.
That one was left out of the Assassin's Blade.
Someone's been reading some fan fiction.
It reminded me of her riding on the stolen Asterian mares with Ansel through the desert.
There it is.
Except this time she actually lets herself feel this like unrestrained freedom for a second. And it just feels like such a huge moment for Celaena's character. And I pulled the quote because I loved her inner monologue during this part where she thinks she could die for this love of speed, the surety in her bones. How had she been afraid of this body for so long? Even her soul felt looser, as if it had been locked up and buried and was only now starting to shake free. Not joy, perhaps not ever, but a glimmer of what she had been before grief had decimated her so thoroughly. I love this for her so much. I was just smiling reading this whole chapter.
Well, and like through all of this, Rowan is also equally having the time of his life. And she's like, I think he's playing. Like he was having so much fun. And they just kind of have like this like back and forth. And I don't know if this is like where it's heading. This is the vibe I was getting, but I was like, is this some like enemies to lovers banter going on here? Like, what is going on? And then like nothing comes from that, from this whole chapter chunk. So maybe it will, because like them doing the whole like, we'll go together kind of a thing at the end. I was like, okay, I don't know.
She like notices his body for the first time.
Yeah, she does.
It's like, hello.
So maybe it's heading that way. I don't know. But I love this whole time in the village that they were there, where, you know, everyone's just turning away from them and shutting the doors, and there's no room for them at the inn, kind of a vibes. And Rowan's like ready to give up. And she says, Nehemia had never once let the preening, bigoted idiots of Rifthold shut her out of any store, dining room, or household. And she had the sense that her friend might have been proud of the way that she went shop to shop that afternoon, head held high, and charmed the ever-loving hell out of those villagers. Yes, Celaena, do the things. I just love that so much, and just her taking like a page out of Nehemia's book. And I also felt like that was good for her to have like a positive moment of Nehemia when everything's been so negative in that. But yeah, I just love that so much. And like her whole little shopping scene, she's just living her best Celaena life.
Yes, and the whole time, Rowan's like dutifully carrying every bag and box she brought on her little shopping spree. And I'm cracking up because she's like losing her mind over all the candy and the chocolates and the pastries.
Well, yeah, it even said like he was carrying her stuff except for the chocolates because she was going to eat those. And it just said, which she ate as she strolled around, and ate another after another. I was like, yes, she did. She ate a lot.
She just ran 20 miles. You got to fuel up.
True.
When I was like the first store that she went to.
She's like, gods, oh gods, the chocolate.
At least she knows where they came from this time, too.
Yeah.
That is true. It's a positive.
She bought them herself.
And she spent Rowan's money, so go off, queen.
There you go.
Even better.
Yeah, for real. In this, though, she was having like a memory of her a time with Aedion, and she just like mentioned something really short about him. But it made me think, like, has Celaena not thought about Aedion during all of this time? Did she not hear all the rumors that apparently went around about him and his life? Because he would have been in Rifthold, I would assume. Like, he came to get at least the sword. Like, he got that from the King of Outerland. I know that he wasn't there all the time, but I would feel like Celaena would have had to have heard of him.
Honestly, it might have been part of her whole thing where, like, she doesn't feel ready to accept, like, the responsibility that comes with her name, or that there's, like, nothing to go back to. And maybe she's afraid that since Aedion at least did have this fierce loyalty to her as a kid, I don't know what she assumes about him now.
I never thought about that, though, that, like, she wouldn't have sought him out because she was so afraid to, like, accept who she was supposed to become. So like maybe that's why, but after thinking about it, I am kind of surprised that nothing was kind of like sprinkled in, at least the entire time that she was at the castle. Like, he's supposed to be the general of the Bane, this great army, like doing all this conquesting and stuff for the king, but yet all her time spent at the castle, she never overheard or like never heard of anybody talk about him.
Name,
I mean,
or
you know
saw
what
his
I mean?
group on a map or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of
I
interesting.
searched for it, but didn't he operate under like a different title than his name? It was like the Wolf of the North or something like that. Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah,
I
that's true.
I couldn't find it.
He is mentioned in Crown of Midnight in Dorian's POV, and so it says, of course, as fate would have it. So he's like thinking about the heir of Terrasen, Aelin Galathinius. If she had lived, would she have perhaps become a friend, an ally, or his bride? And it talks about how Dorian had met her once. Of course, as fate would have it, her cousin wound up becoming Aedion Ashriver, his father's prodigy general and the fiercest warrior in the north. He'd met Aedion a few times over the years, and at each encounter with the haughty young general, he'd gotten the distinct impression that Aedion wanted to kill him, and with good reason.
I know, it's like the haughty young general.
Hottie.
Hey.
Hottie with a body.
Hottie with a body.
Body count.
That's haughty.
But anyway, so he has mentioned, like, Dorian's met him before, but it just says he's met him a few times over the years. And I got the impression when Aedion first showed up, they hadn't seen each other in a long time. So I don't know. I mean, maybe she would have heard some discussion about him.
It would make sense to me that Aedion would avoiding at all costs trying to come back to Rifthold. So it's like, it's not like he'd be coming
Right.
back there a lot. So
Especially because he's faking the ring power.
right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So
And even
Yeah.
though Selena is like super well read and cultured, as they always say, like she did have a lot going on. It's not like she was,
Right.
you know, very politically active, and she was set to the whatever jobs was given to her basically by Arabin as well. So
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Chapter 29, this is back with Dorian and Sorsha. They just had their whole interaction where he's, well, first of all, we didn't even talk about how he's taking some sort of something to like suppress his magic with the iron in his
Contraceptive.
a
blood.
contraceptive tonic. No one would suspect that.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be a huge like blowback at him, but I guess we'll find that out later. But Sorsha kind of like denies his like coming on, and it was in that first moment too that he just like stands up and is coming over to her. And Dorian is supposed to be some sort of big ladies man, but we don't really see that because we just see his time with Selena and then like his heartbreak with her. But part of me was kind of getting the ick with like maybe he has like hardened his heart and he just doesn't care anymore and going around doing whatever kind of vibes. So I don't know about that, but she kind of denies him. She kind of walks away. He comes back. All the things that lead up to is said. He did not move, didn't do anything but stare, seeing her exactly how she saw him as she grabbed the lapels of his tunic, pulled down his face to hers, and kissed him fiercely. I was like, first of all, get it, girl. But the whole time I was thinking, oh no, does this mean she's going to die now? Because Kyle says she's going to die.
yeah, she is.
So like ruined the moment.
And Kyle's like looking forward to that happening now.
I'm laughing during it, so I guess I can't deny. I'm not looking
dead.
forward to it. You know, it'll be great if they live happily forever, but I don't read it in their palms, in their futures. I don't see it.
It wouldn't make it interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
And I think
Oh.
honestly, he has lost someone that he grew to love, but it was her decision. Like she broke up, she being Selena, broke up with Dorian.
Right.
I think that if he lost someone, or if his dad found out what they were doing, what they were hiding, and he executed or sent her to be executed, if his dad betrayed him in that way and took away this thing that he's grown to love, that would be a huge turning point for him,
Yeah.
rather than, you know, him causing it or anything like that. And then it's later on in my theories I'll get more into, so I won't say it now.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah,
Intrigue.
that's a good point.
And just like the way Dorian kept asking, like, are you going to share my secret? Are you going to tell? He was just giving me, maybe I'm just like decided it in my head that something's going to happen with him, like in a bad way. But I'm nervous for Dorian.
Yeah.
Very nervous for him.
And
So
now
I don't
Lauren's
really
on Ick Watch.
Lord's always on
was.
the watch. Trust me.
It really
Subtly.
was, though. He was kind of giving the ick. Anyway, at least for me, somebody might be into that. That's okay for them. Sorsha was, so.
You know, your icks are your icks. We don't yuck people's yums here.
Ugh, I
right.
hate when
I
people
hate
say that.
that. Nope.
Yep, we want people's chomp.
Yep.
Oh, that was a good one.
Thank you.
So then we flip to outside with Kale, Aedion, and Ren. And this is like Ren comes around and he's like all cut up and whatever. Aedion kills those 6 guys like super fast. So first of all, he's awesome. But Kale finally sees them and says, I don't know these men, Kale said, more to himself than in a protest of his innocence. I've never seen that uniform. So it's like, who are these guys? So my theories are either they're just like, no, it's a giant, like big city. So maybe there's just security that he's not in charge of since he's like captain of the royal guard. Maybe it's just somebody in the city or something, keeping it innocent. Or these are like the secret guard that we kind of got to know when, oh, the eyebrows, that we got to see when the king killed Rena Goldsmith, the singer from Crown of Midnight, and it said the secret guard, and they were obviously with him just murdering a lady for singing a song, so they obviously weren't good guys. That's my assumption as to who these people are.
I think it would have to be the secret guard definitely over some random city guard. Because, yeah, he's in charge of the royal guard, but he's been in the city. He would know what the city uniforms look like, even if it's a small section of them,
I guess
right?
that's true.
I didn't think of it, but yeah, I didn't think of the secret guard. After reading it, that does make sense.
Well, and it's impressive that they have uniforms, but he still has never even seen them. So they're either like really good at their job. I don't know.
A really good point. If you have a secret guard, don't make uniforms.
Well, like there's 6 guys in matching outfits coming down the street.
Yeah. The first thing I need from my secret guard is to get you dressed up, so everyone can know you're my secret guard if they see you.
Well, and again, it was like dark clothes with like a dark embroidered insignia.
Still,
So but still, it was something identifiable that whenever he pulled it off and brought it over, they were able to like talk about how it's connected to the castle. Like that just felt poorly planned, but
Yeah. What do they do in the day? Well, I guess, are they out in the daytime? Because then the uniform would be like,
completely obvious.
Yeah.
Maybe they wear pure white in the daytime.
There you go. Yeah.
because that's not any more obvious.
It's just blinding.
Yeah, that really doesn't make sense at all to have uniforms for a secret guard.
And it's not even that they're wearing it. Like he has to like commission those from somebody in the city to make
Or have them secretly made. Does he also have a secret seamstress?
Yes. A secret armor.
Maybe that's what the queen does. She's just back.
There you
sewing,
go.
I'll get you secret securities uniforms ready, sweetie.
She's running the sweatshop in the castle, making all the
It's located in the secret tunnel.
making all the armor for the secret guard. Oh, jeez.
Okay, so chapter 30. This said the streets were teeming despite the hour, and one of the women who passed by slouched over and gripped Aedion's tunic, spewing a slur of sultry words. But the general used a gentle hand to disengage her and said, "I don't pay for what I can get for free."
My man.
I was like, OMG!
Aedion, Azure River.
But then Kale's next line was like, I don't know if that's true because he hasn't had anyone in the last few weeks or something like that.
I wish Kale said that out loud to the lady. He's like, actually, he has not had regular visitors, so I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, the fact that Kale knows that too is so funny.
Yeah.
I had another note about this section where Kale's like trying to act drunk or like stoned or something, and I would pay good money to see this play out in real life. Like a lot of the time when people are like, what's a scene from a book that you wish was a movie, and people are always describing these sick action scenes and stuff, I'm like, no, I want to see Kale trying to pretend like he's being chill.
I love that they said you have to act like you're drunk or high, but also here are some drugs in case you can't act that well. Here's some pipes if you really need
She
the
knew.
help.
Well, and Aedion
On the
knew too
house.
because he just immediately started talking and like just took over the situation.
Yeah.
Like, you just sit there. I got it. It was so
It's
good.
cracking me up. And then about the woman who helped them, it described her green cunning eyes, and I put the gif in here from SpongeBob of Mermaid Man going evil.
Well, and I had said too, like, because I wrote that down as well, and I just said, I don't trust her. And then she was helpful. She helped Ren medically and, like, obviously helped keep them from the guards and everything else. So, assumedly for now, she seems to be a good guy. So, there's another all things green aren't evil, potentially.
And at least it was like her green cunning eyes, not like, I don't know, sometimes we get like really creepy descriptions of green eyes or something where it sounds a little more ominous, but it's like she's cunning and then she helps them.
Or green devil eyes.
I think somebody has those. The twins, the shadow twins or something, or like the
Oh, yeah.
they have 2 green devil eyes, or somebody actually has that.
Creepy.
Well, and like when Archer was described, it was like the lightning made the green in his eyes flash or something.
Yeah. Well, and she doesn't do that with like the blue eyes, and it's usually like the water made them look so blue. Like it's not in a creepy way ever. So
Right.
The river flowed into his eyes and created an ocean that just went on forever into a well of a sea of blue and sapphire into another well of another ocean.
Throw a lake in there and get some
How
different
long is it
bodies of
gonna
water
go?
going.
Lake and a ravine of mountains with a clear blue sky above reflecting in the pool of water
Sapphires lining
of the
bottom.
ocean that were sapphire like his eyes.
In the pond of his eyes.
into the pond of his eyes.
That'd be a great, like, if
Oh,
someone
God.
did just ramble on like that for a character to interrupt them, be like, "Are you okay?" Like they're just totally lost in their eyes, can't describe them.
And then they start like looking for. We kind of got it last chapter chunk, I think, where Aedion was talking about him being like held captive, like when it first, like Terrasen first got taken over, and the birds were flying in a certain direction, this way
yeah.
and that way, like that whole thing. But this is like the first time they talk with Ren and Murtaugh, and well, I guess Ren is kind of down for the count. He's injured, so they're talking to Murtaugh.
They talk over Ren to Murtaugh.
Yes. They like make a map of where these powers were and have decided that it was a spell that has like basically stopped magic, and that there's some sort of beacon thing, I guess. And I guess my first question was, obviously we don't know everyone in the world, but it feels like this is their at least first time figuring out this about the magic. So why has it taken them 10 years to even try to start putting something together, even if they haven't seen each other like individually? Or
I know they talked about getting one of the accounts from a merchant about like the wave coming from another direction. So it seemed like it was just like getting information over time, and then they're like, wait a second, there were 3 waves that happened, and I'm sure at that point they just put 2 and 2 together of the directions of
2
the
and 3.
waves.
1,
2
2,
and
and
3
3 together.
They see what happened was they put
Found the hypotenuse of the triangle.
That's right.
The Bermuda Triangle.
I feel like that's obviously going to be a giant thing. And they also said that they needed visual, like somebody had to actually go and make an account of what they saw there, kind of a thing. So whether someone's actually going to go themselves or they're sending someone, that obviously is important if that's how they're going to hopefully stop the curse of magic in Rifthold. There we go. That sentence was really hard to get. And then Rifthold.
And scene.
All right, on to chapter 31. So I thought this was very funny. So this is at the point when Manon brings Abraxos back, and she's like getting him into the cell, and he's like going kind of reluctantly. Her inner monologue is like she didn't pity him because she pitied nothing, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. And I just thought it was so funny because there have been times like this where she's saying something like that, like, I don't feel this way because I don't have feelings. I was just pondering it, when it's like very clearly that's how she's feeling. Like that's the emotion that she's feeling. We're supposed to picture her as this no emotion, just very harsh, predatory and instinctual as like witches. Like I guess that's the picture we're getting of most of the witches, and especially Manon and stuff. So I just think it's funny that like, yeah, your pity is what you're feeling, but it's like, I'm not feeling anything. I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's like a teenager or even my toddler. She's like, I didn't do that. Like Emma, every time she has a nap, and she's like, well, I didn't actually sleep. So it's like, I saw you sleeping, but sure. So that's like where where Manon is, where she's just like, but I don't think about it, so I don't have those feelings.
She said the
That's
funniest
a
thing the
perfect
other day
analogy.
related to that. I'm not sure if it's something you told her, Lauren, but Emma was trying to tell me something, and she said, and you know I'm not lying because my face turns red when I'm lying, and it's not red. And I was like, I don't know who told you your face does that, but I'm all for you thinking it does. If that makes you stop lying.
Nice.
Like, I have more of a visual note for this chapter.
This is literally incredible. I love this.
You drop it in the Patreon, like the Discord channel for this episode. To drop it in there.
Yeah, we do have, we got those Discord channels specifically for each episode, so I'll have to put it in there. I've seen other people draw this comparison before too, and it just makes me laugh. I put, when they're talking about Abraxos in the wildflower field, like rolling around, I put in a picture of Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon with like a flower crown on.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one to think of that, because like as soon as it even mentioned his teeth, I was like, oh, so it's Toothless. Now I can't stop picturing him in any scene.
But he's like, it's funny because in fan art and stuff, he's like a wyvern, he's like super giant and scary looking, but then his attitude is very Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. And I was cracking up at like Manon's inner monologue or whatever about him, where she's like, Abraxos, the flower-loving worm. She's like so mad. Oh yeah, and then I wanted to know if you guys had any theories. I know we talked about this a little bit, but if you had any theories on this is a scene where Abraxos is like refusing to eat, is it the goat that she brought for him, or the sheep that she brought from him? And it says it tasted off. The sheep were raised inside the mountain, so maybe it was something in the water. That was like kind of her
it was
thought
like a piece
process.
of meat or something. Like it was
Yeah.
mutton, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was a piece of meat, and then she went and got a ram from the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in her head, as she's thinking about this, she's saying maybe it was something in the water. But I wanted to know if you guys had any theories about this specifically.
Yeah, so when she said something in the water, my mind immediately went to the lady who is dead in the water. But then I was like, wait, that's another country or continent.
Oh.
Like Rowan and
Yep,
Selena are with.
very
I was
far
like,
away.
Yeah.
maybe it like went down the stream or something. But yeah, that not a thing. I even started writing it down, and then I was like, wait, hold on. So then I had originally thought that the people were being like tampered with, kind of like how the guy under the clock tower, I said that earlier, was like that creature person we met under the clock tower had been, because we know that the king has been to the gap. None of the people come back with him, so it makes me think that he leaves them there to like work with the wyvern. He doesn't just kill them. That was my
Right.
guess. And then that he like does whatever magic with his ring that like changes them. But now that it's also like the animals, that's where I'm like, that doesn't make sense. So maybe it is like just the obsidian that's there or something. But I don't
Okay.
know that I have any confirmed theories. So
My theory is the witches all together, if I'm remembering correctly, were either the spawn or part of the process of the Valg or the Volg, like breeding into the world. Is that right?
Yeah, like the Volg mated with Fae to create
That's
the witches,
right.
I think.
I think that's it. So it might have something to do with that. And maybe she's able to sense their presence if that's what they are. Because, like I said earlier, there's the 3 towers, and where they are right now is in the middle of that triangle. So maybe if whatever spell happened allowed those creatures in and out, that it's pieces of them or their essence left behind or something like that. Something's tainting the world in that little triangle.
you're like Vogue Watch. You
It's
think
just
they're
that they've been
everywhere.
mentioned so much and they haven't come up yet. There's several things that have been mentioned and haven't come up yet, and that's one of them. That's one of the big ones that keeps being brought up. It's little things that are said like in moments where it's like, oh, that's something that you might throw away, but that one's been said repeatedly.
I don't know
Or-
that it's been brought up a ton since the very beginning.
They've
I don't know,
mentioned
maybe I'm just missing it.
Like I said, in passing. It's not like a whole paragraph dedicated to them. It's just like, oh, this is a little bit of history there. It's almost like, I think, like chapters from now when it's talking about the guy who tried to marry Maeve and he got lost and his ring was lost. And I was like, well, you wouldn't mention that ring unless we're going to see it again, so sort of thing. But I feel like we're getting a lot more immediate instances where something's mentioned and then like 3 chapters later it happens. But the Vogue have not happened yet, but they've been mentioned in almost every book.
Oh, yeah, I think it's usually like you said, like it's usually the history. I'm trying to think of what they've even said. I feel like it's like the Volg Wars and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
And then they
said
just
that,
kind of
like
move
you
on.
said, they bred the Fae into witches,
Yeah.
that they were attacking. It's little stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're
Okay.
coming back. They're
Kyle's
coming
on
back.
Volg
Got
watch.
my tinfoil hat on. The Vogue are coming. The end is coming.
A tinfoil hat.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Okay, I have a lot of notes about the last few chapters. But chapter 32, my only note was I was dying. This was like right after she had finally taken Abraxos, and I think this is the first time they fly. Is that right?
Yep.
And so she thinks they're about to die, and then he finally like opens his wings and they like take off. And the chapter starts with Manon's stomach went from her throat right out her ass. I was just
Those are good
cracking up at
lines.
the way that was worded. And I'm dying because like my heart was racing reading this, even on the reread, just the way that the sequence was written and like how she could start to see like the pine cones on the trees and like was panicking that they were about to die. But I also love this description. It felt very similar to the description of Selena running like in her Fae form. This description of Manon experiencing this first flight with Abraxos, where it says she had not understood what it had been like for him to live his entire life underground, chained and beaten and crippled until she heard that noise of undiluted, unyielding joy, until she echoed it, tipping her head back to the clouds around them. Yeah. There was a lot more there, but I'm just so happy for everyone.
Which is just the time that Sarah's going to come in.
What's coming.
I know. Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
And then chapter 33, the beginning, I just had to note Selena's talking about all her endless training with no results. Like she's, trying to control the fire and she's not getting anywhere. And then she says the only thing that had come of it was an unyielding appetite. Selena ate whatever and whenever she could, thanks to her magic gobbling so much of her energy. And a couple months ago, I started going to the gym with John every day. And like I had been working out consistently before that for a little over a year. But now that we're lifting weights like for, 60 to 90 minutes a day, we got to a point like a couple weeks in where I was ravenous all the time and I could not stop eating. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I?
She was hungry too. I debated on saying it.
You already looked. You looked ashamed the moment it came out.
You like hit as soon as you said.
Oh, that's all
my
right.
gosh. Keep it family friendly, folks.
Anyway, this just made me crack up because this just happened to me like a couple months ago. And so I was just like, I cannot even imagine how hungry Selena must be. We know our girl loves to eat.
That's kind of how I read it too, where I was like, she loves sweets. So I'm sure she's also using it as an excuse where it's like, well, I got to eat a whole cake today.
I need
I'm
the
so
calories.
hungry.
And I think I forget which chapter it is, but it says she like, when she was done washing some dishes and she went to sat down, she had like an entire like loaf of bread.
Yeah.
I'm just like, all right,
like,
get
all
it.
right,
Get you
cool.
them cards, girl. Like, jeez.
I get it. I could relate to that.
And it wasn't even like that she started eating it. It was like, and then she dived into the middle of a loaf of bread or something like. She's like, went right for it.
So funny.
I love that for her. But also, this is the first time she finally starts thinking about preparing to see Maeve again, which is, I mean, she had like, it seemed like she just had completely given up on all of that. And now this is the first time she's finally like thinking about that again and like, oh, maybe I should get ready for that.
Well, and I like that she finally talked at the stories.
Yeah.
She started like smiling at the random guards, just trying to like be friends with people. She's been there for so long. I think it just shows how much she's like wanting that connection from people. And that's why it hits so much harder later when Rowan like kind of shuts that down for a minute. I don't know. And then she tries to like be part of the group and everyone's just like dead silent. And just like, she says her thing. And then she asks a question and it's like dead silent again because has not been involved at all. But while she's sitting there, well, I don't actually know that it was this night. It just talked about how every time they'd come together for stories and that Rowan would always be there too. And it was just, kind of talking in general about each time it happened kind of a thing. It had said Rowan still appeared in his hawk form. And there were some nights when she even sat beside the back door and Rowan sidled a bit closer to her. And I was like, is this supposed to be like a thing? Like, at like church camp and you just kind of like scoot a little closer kind of a vibes? Like, is that what's happening here while they're listening to the stories?
And what's hilarious to me is just seeing him in his hawk form, like his little talons, like whatever he's perching on, it's just like scoots over his
Picturing
little bird
like
scoot.
a hawk scooting closer and Selena's just like, oh my god.
Oh my god. Oh, that's incredible.
His
Holy
feather just
crap.
brushed up against me.
She's giving him little pieces of her piece of bread.
She's throwing them out there for the bird.
Yeah. There you go, pal.
It'd
Here's
be
your
really
little piece
funny
for
if
you.
like she just thought it was Rowan, but it was just some hawk.
Some
that
hawk.
found it. She just couldn't tell the difference. Like, Rowan's so close to me right
He
now.
comes back
God.
like, what are you doing?
She's like, oh my god, like petting this hawk. Nothing.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my gosh, my cheeks hurt.
That's amazing. I didn't even catch that line, like even on the reread. I just read that part this morning and I never realized that. That's funny.
I'm always looking for any of those romance moments. I'm gonna find them all, even in hawk form.
Even in hawk form.
my
Just
God.
give me anything. I need romance.
Sarah, please.
Speaking of looking for romance, I was dying at the part where Gabrielle shows up and she like finds some dumb excuse to go to Rowan's room to like see what they're up to. And as she's about to walk in the door, she's like, oh, maybe he was here for a far more intimate reason.
I know. I was like, oh, I mean, we don't know anything about Rowan, so.
I just thought it was so funny that it's like at the last minute, she's like, oh, maybe I'm interrupting something. And then she still walks in the room.
Well, and then the fact that he's shirtless on a table or whatever.
Yeah. She's like, oh, maybe I am. Oh, wait, but Rowan's clothed. We're fine. Okay. Hard transition into my first cry count. Put it on the cry counter.
Oh,
I
boy.
cried in chapter 33 into chapter 34 because she goes into the room to bring in stew or whatever, and Rowan like kicks her out, and then he follows her out of the room and has this whole, I mean, he just like yells at her about how he just like does not care about her at all, unleashes that on her. And she spirals, and it says the light inside of her guttered and went out or something like that. And it just made me so sad, because even the point that we had brought up a few chapters ago, Rowan does not seem to have any light of his own left either. And she caught him in this really vulnerable moment, and he completely lashed out. Like Celaena's trauma was too much for him because he hadn't properly dealt with his own either. And they're both just suppressing all of it until it bursts out of him. And at first, when you're first reading it and she's like, you left me, and you're like, okay, that's not a big deal. Like, he literally just went upstairs with his friend. It almost seems silly for her to be upset about him like leaving her, but she's been spending all of her time with him. He's the only person who's ever truly seen her true form, knows what she is, and is still encouraging her to be in that true form and find out what she's really capable of, even if he's just doing it on orders because he's bloodsworn to Maeve. So like, she doesn't have anybody left anymore. And she does look up to him, at least in the sense that she has to rely on him for training and like finding out information about the Fae in general. You know, like she knew nothing about her own power. They're doing these investigations together and all these things. So even if they're not friends, even if they hate each other or whatever, he's the closest thing that she has in this state where she's really isolated and she's really vulnerable. And that has to be really freaking her out, that she's finally realizing like he has other people in his life and he doesn't need her the way that she feels like she needs him right now. And that just like shattered me, this whole conversation. And then she turns around and does the same thing to Emrys in the next chapter, and so we'll talk about that too.
Well, and this is what I was saying just at the beginning of this chapter, where she was trying to like say hi to the guards or smile at them and try to like, she was just starting to feel like maybe comfortable enough to step out of like the converse of only knowing Rowan, and then this just like completely brought her back to square one. Even worse than that, because even whenever Nehemia had died, she still had like a little flicker of like it had never gone out. That analogy has been brought up a couple times, and this is the first time that it was just like completely gone. And it hit hard for sure.
Womp womp.
Don't. Nope. I saw him prepping for it.
You saw the wind up.
My only note for the chapter was like, there was a lot of lore here. I really enjoyed hearing the history, and like, because that's what I'm here for. Feed me the history. I love it.
Chomp chomp, Kyle.
Yeah, chomp chomp on that
right.
lore. No, I just like the story. Learning a little bit more about her past and everything. I really think that, again, that's something that's said that will come back in one way or another to haunt Maeve specifically, about her past of having this guy who supposedly loved her and was like about to start this new life with her, and she lost him. I'm on ring watch, I guess, or that guy watch if he's still around.
That guy.
I don't know if they said his name.
I don't think they did. Yeah, chapter 34, like I said, chapter 33, like rolling right into chapter 34 was what initially got me. They're showing off this knife, and he's like, look, Alentia. And of course the knife is from Eelway. And then she just turns around and says the exact same thing that Rowan had just said to her when he couldn't deal with this like vulnerable emotional moment. That was the thing that just like set her over the edge. And the stuff that she said to him was just awful.
Yeah.
Well, and like in her head, she had said like it had snapped with such a violent crack that she was surprised they didn't hear it. And in its place was a screaming, high-pitched and keening, loud as a tea kettle, loud as a storm wind, loud as the sound the maid had emitted the morning she walked into Celaena's parents' bedroom and seen a child laying between their corpses, which is...
No.
Yeah. I don't... So like that's what... that moment, and it just like snapped for her, and it was, the description there is just so good. I mean, like to explain like her feelings as like the writing of it goes, but so tough to see.
Yeah, that just, that description of like her grief. And then this just made me love Emrys even more though, because his immediate response is just compassion. It's like, you can like see the heartbreak in him for her immediately. Like obviously he's upset, but his first response is to have this conversation with Rowan where he says, what are you doing to that girl that makes her come in here with such emptiness in her eyes? And maybe he sees it in Rowan too. I'm sure he does, because he's, if Celaena's noticing his eyes look soulless or empty or lifeless or however she described them, I'm sure Emrys, being around for so long, can see that in him as well. But ugh, I
And the
just
fact
love
that like
him.
no one else talks to Rowan this way. Like
Yes.
no one else would do anything. And then the fact that he's doing that for Selena is like so, I don't know. He's just the best. He says to Rowan, I see her slipping away bit by bit because you shove her down when she so desperately needs someone to help her back up, which is I think exactly what he's trying to do in that moment, in a way that by like getting Rowan to do something, since he can't be the one out there in training and whatever else, but he's trying to be someone to help her back up.
I was just gonna say those two things that Emrys says I think are a big turning point for Rowan.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about how Rowan is training her and their respective abilities. We see a lot of her causing these wildfires that he uses his wind to put out.
Yeah.
But there is one instance that she's making a small fire that he uses his wind to feed the fire oxygen. And I think that he's learning that his power, and he himself, can totally snuff her out if he wanted to. But he can also be an immense help in building her up. And I think it's going to be that turning point about being like, he can use himself and his power to increase her.
Cry.
Kyle with the
so
deep
precious.
analogies.
Put it on the cry counter.
Kyle made Lauren cry. 800 and
Yeah, I was going to say. I'm keeping track of it.
Hey, 808 years of marriage. I don't know if that's a lot or a little.
100 times a year? It's like a third of every year. I mean,
Anyway.
I love that. I love that. And I wonder too if Emrys heard what Rowan said to Selena the night before, because he was like shouting at her in the hall or whatever. Like he had come
That is
out of his
true.
room to follow her. And so I wonder if he immediately made that connection, and that's why he went to Rowan and said like, what are you doing? Because obviously he would know that that was the exact same thing that she had turned around and said to him.
or if he didn't, someone did. They all got that super hearing.
Very true.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure being in the kitchens and the storykeeper and
Right.
whatever, I'm sure he would have heard it from someone, even if he didn't hear it firsthand.
Right.
Yeah, and he knew Evelyn. I had totally forgotten
Yeah.
about that. He knew
same.
Selena's mom, Aylin's mom.
Well, and it took me a minute to remember who Evelyn was, because he just dropped, whatever.
first name.
And yeah, and so it took me a second to like, because they only dropped Evelyn's name in the,
Oh, you're
what did you
right.
call it, John? Like flashback dream thing she was having.
Dream memory.
Dream memory?
Thank you. Yes. Where like the dad just said something like something Evelyn. It wasn't like they had introduced her character kind of a thing. So it did take me a second for that. But yeah, that I didn't like just the fact that he knew her, but the fact that her mom worked in the same kitchen for like
Yeah.
a year. And I'm so glad he told her about that later, and that she has that connection. It also makes sense why she came in her Fae form later, and they all recognized, especially the older guards that were like looking at her like, whoa, like it is for sure Evelyn's daughter or whatever. So yeah, I love that part too.
Yeah, his whole conversation with Rowan and just like encouraging him to, what does he say? Help her, if not for her sake, then at least for what she represents, what she could offer to all of us, you included. And Rowan says, and what is that? And he says, a better world.
Yeah.
I love him.
Well, and I love that it also caught Rowan off guard. Like that whole conversation is like he wasn't surprised often, but he
Yeah.
was here, that whole thing too.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is obviously Kyle just made me cry, but when I was reading, this is when I actually cried. This is my cry counter here. In the Drememory, we find out that Aylin's mom calls her Fireheart, which I think is so cute, first of all, as a nickname
Yeah.
for your daughter and everything. That is adorable, especially when they have firepower. She leaves after yelling at Emrys. She just goes and has this complete rock bottom where she just falls over and is just crying, and it was a very relatable moment for myself, just having like that time where you just go and just like cry unabandoned kind of a thing. I'm gonna cry just talking about it. Oh my god. And then it said, and heard so soft as if she dreamed it, a woman's voice whispering, why are you crying, Fireheart? And it was like italics, and I was like, is she like really hearing this from her mom or something? I don't know if that's true, but it said it had been
Yeah.
10 years, 10 long years since she had heard her mother's voice. But she heard it then over a force of her weeping, as clear as if she knelt beside her. Fireheart, why do you cry? She said, because I'm lost, she whispered onto the earth, and I don't know the way. It was what she had never been able to tell Nehemia. For that 10 years, she had been unsure how to find the way home, because there was no home left. And I was bawling like a baby girl.
I had highlighted part of that too, like her reasoning and bringing that back around to what she could never tell Nehemia. And for me, this called to mind the conversation where Nehemia did ask her, like, why wouldn't you return to Terrasen? And we had talked about that in one of our episodes, and she doesn't really answer the question. And she never really tells anyone. It was the same with Sam. Like, anytime somebody had asked her if she would go back or if she'd consider it, she's just like, new topic. Like, I don't know. But the fact that she's even acknowledging that internally, and then that this part is followed up by later on, like her conversation with Rowan as well. But this part is where it leads into the cave.
Rowan comes and sits next to her by the river, and he's like, do you need a minute? And she's like, no. He's like, good, get up, we're going somewhere. Yeah. And he takes her to the cave, where he has, like, with his breath power, made it icy. Like, he's like blowing ice on the, like, that's the vibe I got. Like,
it's like a Mentos commercial.
He's like,
yeah.
like Jack Frost in the Santa Claus 3. Yeah. And so he like freezes the whole place over. And then I was freaking out because it was Luca in the middle, and we had just like gotten to love this little guy. I think I even wrote, like, if something happens to Luca, I quit. But Luca is like chained in the middle of the ice, and he basically is like, go save him, so she has to control her magic, which was a really creative way of doing it. Personally, I think so good job, Rowan. But she said she gave him a particularly vulgar gesture as she stepped onto the ice, and this isn't the first time SJM has said something like that, like a particularly vulgar gesture. So what is the gesture?
Yes, that's the question.
I just put the gif of their friends movement that they do.
I think Connor had put that in our Instagram stories once, like from something else.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was the most common answer, was something.
That and middle finger were the two most common. Yeah. I was also cracking up at just all of Luca's dialogue through this whole situation was so funny to me. And he's like, I hope you brought snacks. I'm starving. Hurry up. He's literally chained on the ice in the middle of this lake in a cave. And she's so freaked out for him. And he's like, I'm hungry.
Says a lot about his faith in them, though. Like, he's like, I'll be fine as long as I can eat something.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, so I'm laughing at that. And then it gets so emotional when she's trying to, like, focus and overcome her fear to control her power. And this is a really terrifying situation for her because she doesn't want anything to happen to Luca. And it says Selena was humming a melody, a bit of symphony that used to calm her. And then, Lauren, you added, she let the beat anchor her, dull the edge of her panic. And later in this scene, it says she hummed some more, the music wending its way from her memory. And somehow the flame grew quiet. And I put just Sam in all caps. Because at least in my head, this is like the sheet music that he had given her that, then later potentially she was playing in, was it Throne of Glass? I think it was the first book. And that he just is still kind of anchoring her and like helping her through these really difficult moments. And that was something that I obviously didn't catch before because we read The Assassin's Blade after this book. But that just made me like so emotional in this scene too.
Well, and I just love that it's, because like being a very musical person, I love that. Like it's like a music thing that helps anchor her as well. So that was just a very relatable analogy, I guess.
So cool.
But I really loved this part. First of all, let me start with that. But this is another 100% Rowan was reading her mind. Like there's no way he wasn't in this moment. Because Selena is trying to go across the ice. She's having this whole inner monologue about like keeping the magic down. And it said, she had never been in control. Even as Selena, control had been an illusion. Other masters held her reins. And then just from the side, Rowan says, you are the keeper of your own fate. Rowan said softly from the shores, as if he knew exactly what was flowing through her head. So, first of all, I'm so glad that Selena is like having that moment where she is going to take control finally over something, because she really hasn't been in control of anything, even when she thought she was, like when she was Audrlin's assassin and she was the best, and then to find out that it was all really fake because of Arabin and whatever else all happened there. But then 100% Rowan was reading her mind. There's no way. There's just no, unless it was just really good timing.
Very well timed, yeah.
But he's literally like on the side, casually looking at the swords and like just hanging out and, like not paying attention. So for him to just throw out the one thing that she needed in the moment seems too convenient to me, but.
I love that. Again, the description of the magic in this whole section was so cool, but I loved as she's trying to figure out how to control and like picture her magic, this whole description of it being pulled out like a tiny thread and snaking around her wrist, and the way that she is trying to picture and describe controlling it and concentrating it. And then again, I'm dying when they are getting back to the shore and Celaena's like, is that why you came, Luca? Like, Rowan promised you snacks? And Luca goes, I'm a growing boy.
Right.
This is something John says to me sometimes.
That's right.
I'm a growing boy.
Bring on the snacks.
When he gets his 10th bag of peach rings that week.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm pretty sure we've had this exact conversation.
Okay, so then, so she's freed Luca and all is seeming okay. They just have to get out, and she's like finally is looking down at the hole she made in the ice where the chain came out, and it said, no, not the ice, the water beneath, where a giant red eye was staring right at her. And from that description, I thought it was like literally like in the ice, like looking right there kind of a thing.
Peekaboo.
Exactly. Come out. But it sounded like it was like way further down in the water because they had some time to run away before it had like broke through the water. So it wasn't like right there like I thought it was, but still, it was right there.
I thought that it said a giant red eye. Like, I thought it was really close up too because it was one eye staring at her. But then you found out it only has the one, so I guess it could have been a lot further away.
That is true. So, so that whole scene, they get out, and the way that Rowan can like control his ice to just be like in the one path they need out was cool. Her getting the sword was awesome. Like, all of that was really neat. But they make it back into chapter 35. They are going back to Mistward, and it said after like Luca had made it safely back inside, she was like, you go ahead. She like immediately turns on Rowan, and she just starts going at him saying, don't bring anyone else into this has to be only for me, and like has that whole breakdown. But it said he snarled and threw her to the ground. The air whooshed out of her chest and the blood trickled out of her nose down her throat. Before he could sit on her, she got her legs around him and shoved with every ounce of her immortal strength, and just like that, he was pinned, his eyes wide with what could only be fury and surprise. So first of all, yes, queen, go off. But literally last episode, we were talking about how this was the first time that Celaena was fully helpless, was when he pinned her.
Yeah.
And she used every single move that she could think of to get out of it and was stuck there. And so for her to now like turn that on him was like, yes, she's figuring it out and she's doing the thing, and she's in her Fae body doing it, which was really cool.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I was all about that moment for her.
And then this just rolls right into this like incredibly vulnerable conversation that they have with each other, where they're literally just bearing their souls to the other person. Celaena tells Rowan what she did to Grave and Archer. They were two of the worst things she'd done out of pure hatred and vengeance and rage. She waited for the lecture, but Rowan merely said, good. And this, I feel like, was even a huge turning point for her, and I guess for them together, because this is so different from Chaol's response. She's saying like she was waiting for the lecture because Chaol was there and he saw it and he knew the things that she did, and he was afraid of her and he wanted her to change, basically. Like, he didn't agree with those decisions, but Rowan saw that. And he even says, like, you do not apologize for defending the people you care about. So that just kind of shared understanding that they have, I feel like is a huge step forward in the fact that they are sharing things like this and being met with like acceptance rather than fear or, not understanding.
Well, like in Celaena bearing her soul, she was talking about Nehemia, and I feel like this was so important for Celaena to finally like accept this, I guess, as a thing. But she had said like she thought I could somehow, she being Nehemia, she thought I could somehow do more, that she was worth more dead, and she lied about everything. She lied to me because I was a coward, and I hate her for it. I hate her for leaving me. She said the words she'd been choking on for weeks and weeks. The rage seeped from her like a wave pulling away from the shore, and she let go of his wrists. So like all of this is happening while she still like has him pinned, first of all, but also like just that she is finally letting go of some of the rage that she has, and is coming to terms with where things are, and that it wasn't necessarily her fault. Like, she put this on herself and made these decisions, and I don't know, all of that. I just felt like it was a very important moment for Celaena and her growth.
Well, we learned too when she was in that moment that she burnt his wrists as she was
Yeah.
holding
Yeah,
him
right.
with
That
all
was
that
intense.
rage. So.
And he just let her. Like the fact that he,
Yep.
even though he was probably in pain, I mean, it
Yeah.
sounded like she burned through his clothes and like his skin was red.
His tattoo.
Yeah, his tattoo. But he didn't even acknowledge it. And I think that was his response when he said, "You do not apologize for defending the people you care about," because she freaked out that she had burned him. Yeah, so they have this conversation and he just lets her like release all of this onto him, even though it's causing him physical pain. And there's like this kind of calm feeling, I feel like, after they have this conversation and they're walking back to the castle. And it says the candles ignited, in quotes, as if to welcome them home, which I just had highlighted. I don't think literally it was igniting for them specifically, but the fact that she's starting to think about it this way after being able to have this open conversation with someone where she's finally releasing so much of this pent up, I don't know, just grief and like all of these feelings that she's been suppressing and afraid to tell anyone. We had started to see some glimpses of her finally opening up a little bit to everyone around her. And now coming back, she's saying, it almost feels like it's welcoming them home.
Yeah.
That was
Well,
cool.
and then just to go back a chapter to where I was just crying, she was telling, her mom, I guess, in this moment of her crying. And it said that for 10
Yeah.
years, she had been unsure how to find a way home because there was no home left. So I just
Yeah.
love that. Just then she turns around and is, saying like this is home for now at least, or like
Yeah.
these people can be where that is. So that was really interesting to me. I did wonder when the candles and like the lights turned on, was that like her power? Like she had finally like let go of some, because the anger was what was like making it freak out because it thought she was being attacked kind of a thing. So maybe she like kind of finally let go of some of that and she was happy for a moment and it was like, wing, fire.
Didn't it say earlier when they first came in that that's like just how the candles worked? Because I thought when they first came there that they were like, oh, it lit the hallway as they walked down or something. I don't know. I might be
maybe.
mistaken, but
Yeah.
I think you're right.
See, I had said that too. I was like, maybe it was her power, or maybe it was just like how the magic worked. I don't know. But I liked the idea.
Yeah.
I liked the idea of maybe it being like subconsciously her power being like, oh, it's home. Ah. The lights.
Alexa, turn on the light.
Exactly.
But yeah, but I love that. And then she walks inside and then she's sitting in the kitchen with Rowan and Emrys and Malachi. And like, I think Luca's still there, or he was for the first few minutes, but they're just bickering like a little family. And Emrys just cares for her so much. It makes my heart hurt. I just love him. So this is a little bit later when she's in Rowan's room after she's like tossing and turning and feels like she has to bring him the salve because she feels so guilty about his burns. So this is not Selena finding out that she has healing powers, because apparently she knew this as a kid. But we as readers are finding this out for the first time. And I thought this was so cool because I feel like this explains why she had such a soft spot for Irene in the Assassin's Blade. And this was another thing that I wouldn't have thought about or caught the first time around because we hadn't read it yet at this point. That was like a really cool connection and kind of explained some of her motivation in that story.
At first, I thought he just meant like you could take away my burn powers because you have fire. Like it was like a fire related ouchie, so she could fix it. I have toddlers. A fire related injury. There we go. Adults here. And she could take that away. And then I also thought it was just like because she's like Fae. Like Fae have accelerated healing. But I do like the idea that she could like heal people. I'm interested in why Rowan knows that. I guess like Maeve would know that. Maybe it was like the genealogy or something, but
because that was mentioned when they talked about it.
Yeah, because he just says nothing major, but you have that gift.
no big deal. But you can heal.
Nothing major. Oh, it's the drop of water affinity I inherited from Mab's line.
Yeah.
But she's the one that says that, not him. But I guess he would have already known that. So
Either way, I hope that she actually does like figure that out. Maybe that's a reason for Irene to come back. So Irene can like teach her stuff. I don't know.
maybe she goes to college with Irene.
Maybe they'll like meet in college and start like a Bookstagram account and then like a podcast. I heard it's been done before.
Where are we? Oh, okay. This is my last set of notes. And I titled it, I Am a Little Baby, because this is where I was sobbing. This was cry number 2 for me on the cry counter. The first cry that I had, I shed like 2 tears. Like it was technically a cry, but this was like, I needed to take some deep breaths after I put the book down because I was not okay. John was sitting next to me when that happened and he was like, what is it? Oh, don't tell me, because he was still reading and he was a couple chapters behind me. Like we haven't read this before. Oh, but Rowan talking about his mate. calling back obviously to what Selena had just said to him, but Rowan saying, I left her. I left my pregnant mate alone. And then in italics, because it's calling back to that previous conversation, you left me, she had said to him. That was when he had snapped. The wounds of centuries ago rising up to swallow him as viciously as her own past consumed her. So there's this deep understanding for her in that moment, learning the reason for the things that he had said. But then even this description of Maeve finding him, and he like is finally hearing his name again for the first time in however long, just felt like another parallel of Rowan's story and Selena's story. But in Selena's, it's Rowan finding her on the rooftop at the beginning of this book. And so all the parallels between the things that they've gone through and those different circumstances, even though Selena's obviously a lot younger than he is, just the fact that they're able to like find some common ground in that grief really just had me.
I thought when I read your note too, it helped me, or made me realize, I guess, that Maeve also has a parallel to Arabin, because they both found those two at a low point, and they took them in and were like, sort of, I mean, we know for a fact Arabin manipulated Selena.
Yeah.
I guess we're not too sure on how much manipulation Maeve did with Rowan, but I would have to believe there is at least some. It's a little too coincidental that they found them both at this super low point in their lives. They'd believe anything, do anything that they could for anyone that was willing to take them in.
Emerson's comment that he made about, like a better world makes me feel like he and Rowan kind of have this like weird understanding that the current world with the current world leaders is not it. And even earlier too, when Rowan was like saying something about his loyalty, and he's like, and it is a pleasure to serve under her, and she was like, I mean, no one asked for that, but okay, I don't know why he said it, like that whole moment, like that he's maybe not 100% content or happy with the stuff that he's doing or the person he's serving. So
right.
I feel like I'm like inferring that, so that parallel maybe makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because I think he even said something about how he just had literally nothing left to live for, and that was and she had like found him in that moment, and I think that was when he like took the blood oath to her to like become part of her court
after
or whatever you want to call it.
After 10 years of just being depressed, doing nothing really but surviving.
Yeah, and then I just, by the end of this chapter, was a mess. They're, obviously bearing their souls to one another, and then Rowan says, maybe we could find the way back together, and Selena says, together, as she took his outstretched hand, and somewhere far and deep inside her, an ember began to glow, and I'm sobbing. And I also just thought it was so interesting that when she hits this low point, it's described as a light going out, but at this point now it's an ember glowing. And I love the like change of language there, even through the course of the series, because I think Nehemia was the one who said to her, do not let that light go out. And then that's like how they phrased it after she and Rowan got in that fight. But now it's like an ember began glowing inside of her.
And I love that you were like crying and having a whole moment as we're like over here. I was like, together, okay, go do it together. I'm all about it.
And she's noticing his body.
I know. I mean, obviously he's talking about his mate and like all of that, and I understand, having read SJM stuff before, like the loss of a mate is like a lot worse than just any other relationship kind of a thing, and I don't know that that's how mates work in this world, because we haven't really seen a lot of that. But in my head, reading it, I was like, that was like 200 something years ago, and now they're gonna do this together.
Get over it.
So cute.
Oh my gosh.
So I did not cry here. And it was interesting too, because you had texted me that you were crying, and I was like, oh gosh, I'm gonna be a hot mess. And then I got in the notes and I saw you cried twice, and I only cried once. So I was like, wait, what did I miss? And it's both of the times you were crying, I was having like this whole different romantic type reaction to things.
Which is so funny. I feel like I just said it in our last episode because you were laughing about that today. But I didn't cry until, I think it was actually the end of Tower of Dawn. I didn't cry until pretty much the end of the series. And this time I was like, well, I don't know, all this stuff feels so much more emotional for me the second time around, because you have 8 books with, well, not all of these characters, obviously, but like there's such beautiful character development through this entire series. And so on a reread, knowing all of the things that all of these characters experience and like all these pivotal moments for them and all this stuff, like you already have this kind of knowledge in your head, and then reading a conversation that is such a huge turning point for someone, or I don't know, it feels so much more emotional the second time around, and I'm loving it. I'm here for it, even though I'm crying like a little baby. So
anything else that you guys want to add before we wrap up the episode. Any thoughts or theories for you guys?
I just had that this was a pretty good section for both world building and character development. I feel like we got a little bit of lore trickled throughout the chapters here.
Yeah.
And then I also feel like almost every character, I actually think every character that got time in like the narrator's seat took a slight shift in morality or how they viewed their own or other situations and motivations. There was no one who was static during this time, which I liked. I thought about the Three Towers a little bit. I'd be interested to see if Briarcliff gets involved because, like I said, I checked the map. It's like almost smack dab in the middle of that triangle with the waste as well where the witches are. And then I just kind of went over each character theories. I think Manon will be wing leader just because I'm not sure why she wouldn't be. I think Kale and Aedion will probably get caught and either have to get some sort of punishment or escape the city somehow and continue their research elsewhere. Selena and Rowan are just going to be the best of buds and nothing more, Lauren. They're going to be real good friends. No smoochies.
Smoochies.
As for Sorcha, rip still. And as for Dorian, not sure. Dorian is either also going to escape with the others because he's kind of listened in. He knows what they're about. If something happens to Sorcha, I think he's either going to try to escape or be severely under his father's thumb for like the foreseeable future. If he gets caught doing what he's been doing, I feel like if his dad figured out that his son has magic, obviously he would hate it, but he's also not going to let that power go to waste. So
Interesting. Yeah, for me, I think I talked about all my like theories and thoughts for the future pretty much through this whole episode. I think the only one that I'm like really unsure of is my whole feelings on Dorian. I feel like the rest of them seem to have like a clear, this is where my path is going, or this is my goal. And Dorian's just kind of in the castle. He has his powers, but he's not like doing anything. He's not actively making a plan to, you know, like take down his dad, or he's not trying to be friends with them and like go off and do, you know, he's just doing his own thing, and understandably so. Like, he has a lot going on with his magic, but like I said earlier, he's at some sort of turning point where he's either going to be team good guy or team bad guy, and it's going to happen one way or the other, probably in the way of like his magic exploding or some sort of big epic whatever. And I really don't want Sorcha to die in all of that. I'm just putting that out there, Kyle. So yeah, I don't know, I'm just getting unsure vibes from that. That's the only one that I'm not sure of, but I am loving the setup for whatever's going to come in this like part 2 section, because it does kind of end like Connor was saying, like, oh, I'm just happy for them, but I know that Sarah's just gonna wreck me, and
Janet, you're up.
Here we go.
There we go, Janet.
So yes, I'm very excited. But we go to the official cry counter. Gentlemen, do you have anything to fess up before we make the
Nope.
Okay, so official cry counter while reading, since I kind of cried in the episode, is Lauren with 2 and Connor with 2. Woo! Anyways.
And that is it for episode 10. You can join us on our next episode. We will be starting part 2 of Heir of Fire. So we're going to be covering chapters 36 to 53.
In the meantime, please rate, review, and subscribe, and of course follow. Visit our website for merch and other resources. We now have some bookmarks, including 2 different designs for the tandem reading guide for Throne of Glass. We'll be starting the tandem read on this podcast in September, so make sure you order your bookmarks soon if you're reading along with us. And while you're there, sign up for our monthly newsletter. And lastly, check out our Patreon for community and perks. And we will see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.
We did it.
That felt a little musical in our vibe.
Yeah, it did.
Bye, 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 bye.